Welcome, everyone, to the Islanders Never Say Die podcast. I'm your host, TJ, and with me here, as always, is our NHL analyst and expert, the grumpy old man. They say there's no shame in his game because he is always the same.
That's me.
Grumpy. How are you this Saturday evening?
I'm angry.
Why is that?
I see people stealing our thoughts and ideas and not giving us any credit.
Well, it's not necessarily that, Grumpy. But
That's
no,
exactly what it is.
It's the curve, Grump. Kevin Kurtz came out today and started talking about what are pieces. Are they trade deadline pieces? Are they pieces that should be moved? Or are they pieces for long-term items? And it's almost like we've been talking about, is Scott Mayfield a person you keep or you trade because he has value? And he's got 1 year left on the contract. He's very manageable, and we think he offers a great deal of service to a team that's in playoff contention this year and next year. And we're seeing ideas being floated out around there. Hey, maybe you can go ahead and trade away Scott Mayfield for a first rounder this year, and you can get a defenseman, NHL ready defenseman, sent back to you coming the other way. And would you take it if you're the Islanders? I was just like, we've been talking about this for months, Grumpy. I wouldn't say necessarily people are stealing ideas, but I'd just say this. We are the curve, Grump. We've been talking about these items that are now coming up to you a week and a half before the trade deadline. We've been talking about this for months.
True. And here's the thing. That's why people should listen to the legendary Islanders Never Say Die podcast, honestly. Because anything that you want to know that's going to and I've said this before, like I said, 2 months from now, what we're talking about now is going to happen, or everyone's going to start opining on it. Like Brock Nelson being a trade piece, watch. It'll happen. Maybe not this trade deadline.
I don't buy that. I don't buy that.
Okay, you'll see.
I'm just Grumpy. The only way Brock Nelson's ever traded is if next year we're struggling the same amount.
Ever traded like he's a superstar on the team? Ever traded?
Okay. Yeah, he is. He's good. Anyway, before we get started, Grump, because you go ahead and lead into something like that, before we have a chance to introduce ourselves, Grump. Number one, if you're returning and you listen to this podcast on a weekly basis or the bi-weekly or on twice a week basis, welcome back. And for those of you who are new listening to the podcast, we invite you to stick around a while. We invite you to subscribe on YouTube, to like on Facebook, and to follow on Twitter. We go live every single Wednesday and Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And again, that's the best way to make sure you don't miss out on any of the action. Also, if you like what we provide here, if you like just a free discourse and the involvement that we have, make sure you drop a thumbs up. Apparently, it helps the algorithm. Who knows? That's what we've been told. Also, Grump, our schedule next week, I don't know if I'll be available to do a podcast next Saturday. I might. It'll have to be an abridged version. I don't know. We're trying to make sure that we could make it work, Grumpy old man.
What's wrong? What's next Saturday?
I've got my wife, Grumpy. So we've got items coming up. She items that are personal items, but she's got, we'll find out where she's going with match program. So
On
we've got that
Saturday?
on Friday. It carries from Friday to Saturday. So we'll have family in town too, Grumpy. So
Oh, I see.
I see. What's that, Grumpy?
That's a little whip noise. You go, whoosh, and you go, oh, oh, oh. I see how that goes.
Oh, good gracious. But no matter what, we will definitely be live on Wednesday. And again, we also go live during, I would say, a handful of Islander games. So to make sure you don't miss out on that action, make sure you subscribe on YouTube, like on Facebook, and follow on Twitter. We do not cover any games that are on Thursdays and Sundays because we have a second podcast called TJ and the Grumpy Old Man. That can be found in the link in the description below. It can also be found as a favorited channel on our YouTube page. And so we do that at Thursdays, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and on Sundays, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Generally speaking, we do not cover the games that are out west. The games being played at like 10 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, in all likelihood, we will not be doing that game live.
But I think we're pretty much done with those this year. So.
Well, there you go. There you go, Grumpy. But this is what I mean by a favorited channel. You could find it down there, also in the link in the description below. That being said, let's talk a little bit about Islanders hockey and the display we've seen over the last two outings. I would say what we saw Thursday and Friday, the Islanders were dominant. Again, albeit they weren't playing world beaters. We were playing the Columbus Blue Jackets. We were playing the Winnipeg Jets. But when I watched the performances in those two games, I think to myself, if we were able to replicate the same effort level and the same enthusiasm we saw in those two nights, we'd be a playoff caliber team right now.
I agree. Where's that performance been from the veterans all year long? Why not? Tell me why. For me, it's one of two things. Either you can't do it anymore on a regular basis, or you were so complacent with your spots being on the first and second line that all of a sudden you get demoted and it lights a little fire under your keister.
What do you mean by that, Grumpy?
Like, hey, it's the Islander Country Club for Anders Lee and Josh Bailey and those two in particular. I'm not going to throw Nelson in that group because he's still on the second line, but they were just fat, dumb, and happy playing on the first line, not performing and never having any repercussions to their crappy play all year. They get dropped down to the third line, and all of a sudden, boom, they start hustling. They going hard into corners. They're back checking, all the things they haven't done all year long. So that's even more worrisome than say, okay, we just don't have that ability to do that anymore. That's more, for me, that's more of a concern. It means that's not the type of guy I can trust every night. He benches the Wallstroms and the Bellows and all the young players if they have a bad shift, but he's had a guy who had a bad half season and somehow they play every night. For me, that's worrisome.
I don't disagree. The play we've seen as of recent, since Lee was demoted from the first line to the third line, has been noticeable. And again, they've been jostling the lines as of recent too. So it's worth mentioning that. And I think people kind of ran with the narrative that our team started to have an uptick of offensive production when Matt Barzal and Zdeno Chara left injured from the lineup. And they were able to say, oh, hold on a second. No Matt Barzal and no Zdeno Chara. Our team is scoring goals. They have been the problem. I think that is debunked. That's what we saw against Winnipeg yesterday. The team is definitely better with Matt Barzal on the ice. There's no doubt about it.
That's why people listen to this podcast, because they want intelligent commentary, not just knee-jerk, stupid reactions to a guy not being in the lineup for a couple of games. We score a couple of goals against some low-level teams, and then all of a sudden, we're better without the best player on our team. That's not the way it works. Matt Barzal was brilliant last night, drew 2 penalties, and was a consistent force in the offensive end. I mean, he's not teamed up with Anders Lee anymore. That's a benefit to him. And obviously, honestly, it helps Anders Lee as well. Let's be honest. He's not a fit with Matt Barzal.
We've talked about this before, and this is no slight to Matt Barzal at all, but John Tavares was a better fit for Anders Lee than Matt Barzal is a fit for Anders Lee. Matt Barzal works a lot better with players who are run and gun style of hockey, who are quick, fast skaters, heavy forecheck, and have the ability to go ahead and shoot the puck. I mean, Anders Lee's a guy who is a garbage man, very, very good garbage man. I say that as nicely as possible. Does a great job of fighting out in front of the net, gets to the dirty work, fights down low, knocks in loose pucks. That's what Anders Lee does. There's not many of those created with Matt Barzal. I mean, Matt Barzal's got the ticky-tack style. And again, how often do we see Matt Barzal ever passing the puck off net or shooting the puck off net to allow for a redirection by Anders Lee in front? Never. I mean, it's just not one of his strong suits, and that's something that Anders Lee does really well, and it's never utilized with Matt Barzal as a center. We've always said, why is Matt Barzal and Anders Lee paired up together? It always never makes sense. But, hey, we go ahead and split that up, and, I mean, Barzal was technically playing on the third line, but he was playing with Bellows, and he was playing with Parise. The Parise, Barzal, and Palmieri line at the time period earlier on before Barzal got hurt was really clicking too. Having three guys on the ice that skate and put forth maximum effort really allows things to open up for that line.
Yeah. Matt Barzal could have probably played for the Russian national team back in the day, like in the 1970s and 80s, because that's the style. I mean, that's the type of style players they had. They didn't play the North American style of hockey. They were about skating, getting to spots, being creative. I mean, they were real, and they were fun to watch. I mean, I'm not a fan of Russia or the Russians, never rooted for them, but they were fun to watch. I have to say that. And he could have fit in on that team, honestly. Totally different brand of hockey, though. So, for me, Matt Barzal, who's he play better with? It's been pretty obvious. I mean, I thought Kiefer Bellows looked good. How long were we asking for Kiefer Bellows to play on the first line with him?
Well, they played technically on the third line. So, like, the late, again, we roll lines pretty consistently. Bellows didn't play. I mean, Bellows was on the same line as Matt Barzal, but Matt Barzal had 17 minutes, and I think Bellows had like 11 or something like that last night. So, I mean, Bellows, we've always said it, right? Why not see him in some action? He shoots the puck from every which angle. He's a guy who busts his ass out there on the ice, and you always felt like he's not given a fair shake. Here's the thing. On a good team, he's never going to be top six forward. Ever, 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 ever. On a really good team, he's a third line left wing. There's nothing wrong with that. But here's the thing. We never gave him a chance until very recently. And you just kind of left scratching your head saying, why did we not go to this option earlier?
Guys who can put the puck in the net and can shoot the puck do play in the top six. They're not third line players. You give this kid a chance, I'm going to tell you again, give him a legitimate shot. He'll easily be a top six player for us. And I think with Parise on the other side, that line was really good last night. Really good. I mean, I have no problems with them. I'm just glad he's getting a shot. All right, 11 minutes tonight is not enough, honestly.
I'm sorry, he played 13 minutes and 10 seconds last night. I apologize.
But still, he's not getting any power play time at all. So, you have to look at it that way as well. I mean, I like him on that first line. Why? Because I want to see what he can do with a real skilled player up top. That's what I want to see. And so far, he showed well.
Okay. I'm going to stick with my statement, but that's fine. Anyway, kind of moving back to overall points. Anders Lee has played very well. He's on a tear as of recent. He has 7 points in the last 3 games, and Josh Bailey lighting the lamp. 3 goals in the last 2 games, doubled his goal production on the entire season in a 2-game span.
Why? What's the thing I've been asking him to do for 12 years now? Go to the net. Go to the net. Good things happen when you go to the net. Both the goals he scored last night was because he was at the net. I mean, he missed one earlier in the week, but he was in front of the net. You want to score goals, you got to get down low. His shot isn't great. It's not like he's going to beat somebody from 30 foot out. That's just not who he is. He has to go to the net, and he's done that. I mean, so I like I said, if Josh Bailey's going to the net on a consistent basis, he can be a pretty good contributor for this team. Will he do that? I don't know. He hasn't done it for 12 years. Just because you've done it for a week or 3 games, let's see if he does it long term. I hope he does. It makes him a better trade. It gives him better trade value if he starts doing that producing.
Yes, Grumpy. If they want to move him, that's fantastic. I wouldn't be opposed to it. I don't think any Islander fan would be opposed to it. But I do find it odd and coincidental that we've seen unbelievable performance over the last 3 games out of Josh Bailey, Anders Lee. We're in a position right now to where the playoffs, they're not happening. And the season, for the most part, is over. And now we're starting to see more production out of our players, and we're starting to see more of an effort level. I look at that in a few different ways. I know you touched on earlier on in the show, but does it mean now that the season's over, right? Pressure's off. Oh, we're playing with house money, and that they can go ahead and sneak up on teams? Or is it because, hey, I'm losing ice time, things are getting jostled around, I need to start exerting more effort out there? Nothing looks like it's guaranteed. The same old tried and true lines that he used to roll out there for the first 45 games of the year with no changes to it. It looks like he's mixing things up. I need to make sure I'm contributing, so they're putting forth more effort. I don't know. It is odd, though, and peculiar when we look at it. It's only a 3-game stretch, albeit, but after the season's over, playoffs have no shot. Now we're starting to see more production from the team. That is concerning a bit.
And not just the team, the veterans, specifically the veterans on the team who've been invisible all year, right? My whole take all year has been, man, we've lost a step. Everyone seems like they've lost half a step. Then for 3 games, they busted. Once we're totally out of the playoff race and, everyone's kind of thrown in the towel. Is it because the trade deadline is coming up? They don't want to get dealt. So all of a sudden, hey, look, I can still have value for the team. Like I said, it's a concern for me. Where was this hustle all year long? Where was going into the corners and being aggressive on the forecheck? Where's that been all year?
Where was the back check that we saw out of Anders Lee the last 2 games? Where was I saw a full 200-foot game from him. Where the hell was that all year long? Certainly wasn't what I saw early on in the season or even midway through the season. It's concerning that it takes us 50 games to get up to this point where we start to see consistent effort from every Islander out there on the ice.
But he hasn't been back checking for the last couple of years. I mean, it's been a noticeable change the last few games from him. Really noticeable. Maybe he got read the riot act by Barry Trotz because, Trotz doesn't like to call out his veterans. He tries to make examples. Let's make example to the veterans by benching the young guys. Yeah, that doesn't work, like I told you. And what podcast about a month and a half ago when I think Kevin Kurtz for The Athletic wrote an article, well, that's what he does. He makes examples of the young guys to get the old guys going. And I'm like, that's not the way you get old guys going. You start benching the old guys, dropping their ice time, then you see what they do. And that's exactly what happened. It's just human nature.
He was opining as to why he does it to the young guys. Maybe this is the reason why. That's not ever what motivates a veteran. That's not ever what motivates a player who's been there a long time. Simple sports. When a guy is a starter and you go ahead and say what we've seen on the ice or what we've seen on the field, what we've seen, whatever sport you're playing is not enough. We're going to give John Smith a chance. And now your ice time and your practice time is being cut. Your game time is being cut. That's the quickest way to get a message to a player. It's not to send it to the young guy who's trying to break his way into the NHL or whatever professional sports league. It's to send it to the vets. So, but anyway, I don't. There's no need to go ahead and get down deep in the weeds on that portion. But now Kevin Kurtz did bring up an interesting topic, right? Varlamov has been rumored to being moved for months, I feel like, and we've talked about that for months. I think most mainstream Islander sites have been talking about that for months. Now, they were talking about Scott Mayfield. I know we mentioned it. You couldn't prevent yourself, Grumpy, from talking about it right off the jump, but no worries. I want to go and revisit it. We have been talking about moving Scott Mayfield or the benefits of moving Scott Mayfield for the better half of a month. Talking about he's
at least 2 months. At least 2 months.
I said at least a month. Okay, month and a half, 2 months. Doesn't matter. Way ahead of the curve on this one. And just to bring up the points and the reasoning and rationale behind it again. He's got 1 year remaining after this year on his contract. So you have cap certainty. He makes $1.45 million across most teams in the NHL. He's going to be a top 4 defenseman. He's going to be a guy who's a stay-at-home defensive defenseman. He plays the physical style and the physical brand of hockey. He gets away with a lot of clutching and grabbing and holding that you can get away with in the NHL playoffs. Maybe you get penalized for it in the regular season. In the playoffs, they let that stuff slide. He's a perfect quintessential big playoff defenseman, defensive defenseman that helps log and eat minutes, and he's fantastic on the penalty kill. What we have always thought on this show, and we'll state it again, is that the guy has never been paid really in his NHL career. He'll now be, 28, or he'll be 29, 30 years old after this contract's up next year.
Yep.
And the max he's ever earned in 1 year is $1.45 million. Compared to what other NHLers earn, it's not very much. He is going to want to sign himself a big contract. And I don't blame him either. When you look at the people that he's been playing with, they've earned a lot more money than him, and he plays just as important situations and minutes as they do. So he's going to want to get paid. He's probably going to be looking $4.5, $5 million per. Would you not disagree, Grumpy?
I would say at least 4.
Or even if it's at least 4, it's not. We cannot pay our bottom pairing defenseman $4 million.
Right, and that was going to be my point. Do you re-sign him? Like, just re-sign Scott Mayfield. Okay. He's going to be playing third pairing minutes because Noah Dobson's just going to get better.
And we roll lines though, right? So third pairing defensive minutes under Barry Trotz is more than third pairing defensive minutes under any other coach in the NHL.
Okay, but you're going to see the lion's share of the right-handed defense time going to Noah Dobson, particularly as he continues to get better, right? And Ryan Pulock. I'm still under the illusion or assumption that he's still hurt. He has not been good this year at all. It looks unsure on his skates. It seems like that foot maybe is still bothering him a little bit. If that's the case, why is he playing? That's a whole nother can of worms. But let's say he gets back to form or reasonably close to his form. Noah Dobson is the best right-handed defenseman on this team. He should be paired with Adam Pelech. They should be getting 25 minutes a night. No doubt about it. Those two guys should play 25 minutes a night. Well, who are you going to take it away from? It's going to be Scott Mayfield. It's not going to be Ryan Pulock. So then you have the question, can we afford to re-sign him and pay a guy who's going to play, 13, maybe 14 minutes a night?
That's why I made that statement earlier, because even as a bottom pairing defenseman, he would still play 17, 18 minutes a night. He plays all penalty kill situations. Under Trotz as a bottom pairing defenseman, he plays 16 and a half, 17 minutes a night, bare minimum.
I think that's going to change as Noah Dobson gets more trust from Barry. You're going to see him in those situations. Again, he's going to be 30 years old. Do you want to give a 30-year-old bottom pairing defenseman $4.5 million a year? The answer is no. So what should you do? You move him when he has his greatest value. So you can replenish that other defense pairing. Maybe another left shot defenseman they can pick up, right? Get a draft pick. That's what you do. You're a little bit early. You always want to get rid of somebody a year too early than a year too late. Why? Because you get max value for him. And I think that's what we're going to see in Scott Mayfield. It would be foolish, honestly, to let him go into next year, I think. I mean, I read the Kurtz article.
Hold on. You've got to finish what you're saying. To let him go into next year, what?
To keep him under contract for us next year. That's why I say remove him now.
Okay, gotcha. You're kind of like half piecing it together, and I don't want to interrupt because you're speaking on it well. I need you to put it together for me, Grump.
Yeah, trade Scott Mayfield now. He's never going to have greater value than he has right now. Never. Absolutely never. Okay. Why? Because he's shown leadership qualities this year. He's shown when he played on the first pair with Adam Pelech that he could handle those extra minutes. That's going to be advantageous to teams going into the playoffs this year. And also they have him for 2 years on a very manageable contract. When he's 30, let that be somebody else's problem whether to re-sign him or not. It's just part of the process of, okay, let's start refreshing this team a little bit, right? Let's try to get some draft picks. Let's see if we can get a younger player in here who can be part of the solution going forward on a manageable deal.
I want to interrupt, though. You said once Noah Dobson starts to get more ice time. Noah Dobson this year, over the entirety of the year, has averaged 21 minutes on ice a night. Under Barry Trotz, he's never going to average 25 or 26 minutes a night. I just don't think it's going to be the case. Scott Mayfield's still averaging 19 minutes and 51 seconds. I mean, even if he were to play on a bottom line defense pairing, he's still playing 16 and a half, 17 minutes a night bare minimum. But I think you are right. He brings a lot more value, I think, to a different team because as a bottom pairing defenseman, he would be fantastic. And you talk about a very, very stout right D. I mean, you'd have Pulak, you'll have Dobson, and then Mayfield for next year. I mean, that's a very solid down the line. That being said, yeah, if you can get and this is what Kevin Kurtz was talking about, if you can get a first and a guy who's an NHL ready defenseman now, that's something the Islanders should go ahead and explore. Absolutely. And I think you have the ability to slowly ingratiate a guy like that and to kind of, even if he's a younger player, right? It helps address some of the age issue that this team has as well. Right. There's no lie about it. Our forwards are one of the oldest forward groups out there in the NHL. And our defensemen, I mean, albeit we won't have Chara and Green on the team next year, but our team is just older. And if you could go ahead and get a younger guy like that, a defenseman and a pick, it helps you restock the cupboards. I have no problem at all with it because if you're not winning a cup next year and don't think that, hey, I've got a really strong likelihood of winning the cup next year, you're going to be trading away Scott Mayfield at the deadline for pennies as compared to what you could trade him for at this year's trade deadline.
True. And I'm a firm believer that we're not going to be a Stanley Cup contender next year. We have so far to go compared to other teams in our conference. They've just blown past us. I mean, and I'm going to disagree with you about not getting 25 minutes a night. John Carlson was playing 24 and a half minutes a night under Barry Trotz when he was there. And that's what I think will eventually happen. Pelech and Dobson together are going to get 25 minutes a night. So then let's say the second pairing, let's say Salo and Pulak, right? Let's say they get 19 minutes a game. It's going to have a lot less minutes for that third pairing. And I don't have a problem with that. I really don't, because maybe you pay that bottom pairing a little bit less. Okay. And then you can invest more in your forward group. That's where we really need help.
And now I want to show you this because we talked about how Noah Dobson has really taken a step forward. James Nichols, we love you. Now this recently he posted, and I think this is fantastic. Look at the points leaders among defensemen since February the 1st. Now tell me this doesn't show you that Noah Dobson's knocking on the freaking door, ladies and gentlemen. Since February the 1st, Cale Makar has the most points of a defenseman in the NHL with 21. Roman Josi, second in the NHL with 18. Third in the NHL, Noah Dobson with 16 points since February the 1st. Tied with John Carlson.
Because the kid gloves finally came off. Barry Trotz took off the kid gloves when it comes to Noah Dobson. Period. That's why you do it. That's why I thought he should have done it earlier, honestly. Shouldn't have waited 2 years before doing it. Now you have to re-sign him as a restricted free agent. Well, guess what? His value went up this year big time. And here's the thing. We told you Dobson was going to be good. We told you. That's why we are the curve here. A lot of people, trade Dobson. Why would you trade Dobson? He's going to be your best defenseman. Remember last year I said Dobson was going to be the best defenseman last year. I missed it by a calendar year. He's the best all-around defenseman on this team. Pelech is just below him because Pelech brings no offensive ability at all. But best all-around defenseman, Noah Dobson.
I'm trying to find, oh man, do you remember? I really wish I would have tagged or at least bookmarked those old articles to where people were talking about, Noah Dobson's really struggling. Noah Dobson shouldn't be doing this. Noah Dobson may not be a top pairing option. Maybe we've just over expected what he can be. Maybe we've over projected, his ceiling. And I just saw those and I was just kind of scratching my head. I'm like, no, guys, he's a young, big defenseman. Just wait. Time will allow you to see what his true ability is. I wish I would have bookmarked those articles, Grump. Oh,
a lot of people say those things because they don't actually watch the games. They'll look at stats. They'll look at one little snippet. Oh, he made a mistake here. If you actually watch the kid play, he's grown by leaps and bounds. The more opportunity he's had, and I know I'm beating that horse again, the more opportunity that the younger guys have, They show you more. They show you what they're capable of doing. The one downside for Barry Trotz being coach is he doesn't like to give those guys opportunities. Dobson has earned his opportunity, and his game is just taken off. Not just offensively, defensively. He's been really, really good defensively this year. People like, well, he made 1 or 2 mistakes, cost us an opportunity for a goal, cost us a goal. Yeah, I don't care. Everyone makes mistakes. Every player makes mistakes. His upside is tremendous, and he's just scratching the surface. This kid's going to be a real star. On a really good team that's an offensive team, he'd be phenomenal, like Devon Taves. Very, very similar skill set.
I'd argue he's got a higher ceiling than Devon Taves has.
Do you remember the player that I told you that Noah Dobson reminds me of? Do you remember? Old Canadian defenseman? Larry Robinson. Larry Robinson. I mean, he's not a fighter. Robinson could fight too, but just they're the same type player for me. Hall of Famer, Larry Robinson.
He's fantastic. Do you remember people? Oh, Nelson or Noah Dobson doesn't move that fast. He doesn't do this. He doesn't do that. Everybody tried to pick apart Noah Dobson's game, and I've always been steadfast with saying this. The guy has unbelievable vision, and what we've seen from him. You look at. I mean, Lee has had now, I think he's had, 6 goals, or he's got 6 goals in the last 3 games. Anders Lee's on fire. And I mean, the one that he was able to redirect in front of the net came on the power play was that fantastic feed from Noah Dobson. I see the vision coming through. This kid is so young, and I look at the vision and look at what he's able to do on the power play. Do you remember how we've talked about how the power play has struggled mightily for years and years and years? Well, here's the crazy thing about it. One player can help redirect that. I'm not saying Noah Dobson is going to solve single-handedly every single power play issue we have, but we went and will go from a team that was inept on the power play to a team that is middle of the road to a team that is successful on the power play unit just because Noah Dobson's on the ice. I will go that far.
When you show faith in the younger player, he feels free to just play his game. Noah Dobson has been the perfect point man for this power play. Earlier, when he was getting 13 minutes a night, he was still tentative. Bailey was also out there at the same time. That's a liability. But he started off really good this year on the power play. All of a sudden, his minutes got cut back. He wasn't as decisive on the power play. Ever since his minutes have been restored and then some, where he's getting over 20 minutes a night, his offensive game has taken off too. And he's always had that vision in hockey sense. From when he was in juniors, that was his ability. And people say, well, he's not a great skater. No, he's a really good skater. He's deceptively fast because of his stride. 3 strides, he's across center ice. 3 strides. That's how good of a skater that he is. He's 6'4". He's a big kid.
Yeah, again, could not be happier about his maturation, his production as of recent. Those are definitely reasons to be excited. You talk about cornerstones to build around, right? On a disappointing season, that's a guy that's come out, and we could say this year, he's bona fide to be a top pairing defenseman in the NHL. He's a guy that has a chance to be an Alex Pietrangelo, I think. And because you look at, you try to look for comparisons, right? Kevin Week said, oh, he's like Cale Makar. I see items of Cale Makar in him. When you get, again, I think that's a lofty expectation to put to him. He's no Cale Makar. He's, the different type of player. But when I see those expectations being drawn and I see the size of a kid like this, Noah Dobson is going to be something truly special.
He's better defensively than Cale Makar.
Yes.
Offensively, there's nobody currently playing in the NHL who's as good as Cale Makar offensively.
That's correct. Yes. Think about it, right? Cale Makar will have a time period like this where he's the most dominant offensive defenseman. Remember, Erik Karlsson used to be like that. There's always one of them. And then, they start to tail off and the next guy will come in. But Erik Karlsson was like that, where he was the most dominant offensive defenseman in all of the NHL. We're going to give up 2 first-round. What was? Do you remember when they originally were trading for Erik Karlsson? It was going back and forth between San Jose and the Tampa Bay Lightning to determine who was going to trade for Erik Karlsson. And there was rumors at the NHL trade deadline that they were going to get him from the Ottawa Senators, and it just fell through right before the deadline. And they were talking about an unbelievable amount of value going back and forth for Erik Karlsson. The point of the statement that I'm trying to make is these offensive defensemen always get extremely highly valued because they can provide offensive touch, they can hand man the puck, and they could switch you again from being stuck and hemmed in your defensive zone to being able to counter strike and being able to pin it and again have success in the offense through transition. And you look at a guy like Noah Dobson who has the ability to do that, and I would say was more competent defensively than Erik Karlsson or Cale Makar can be. I just say that's something special.
Why do those players, why are they so coveted? Because there's so few of them who can actually have offensive ability from the back end. That's why. Paul Coffey, he didn't play any defense either, but man, he could really score. And you know, what's the toughest thing to do in hockey? It's score. And when you have a defenseman who's practically like another forward up there, and here's the thing, we're talking that they're not liabilities defensively. I'm not saying that they're, Scott Stevens back there. But, they're okay defensively. Even Karlsson was okay defensively before the Achilles injury. That's a whole, injuries do things to you. And Karlsson was never the same after that Achilles, in my opinion, anyway. And the same thing with Britt Burns, right? I mean, same thing.
But I'm more meaning to kind of bring it back to the point I was trying to make. You have guys who are extremely offensive minded, guys who are extremely defensive minded, right? You look at your Karlssons, you look at your Cale Makars. I think at some points they're defensive liabilities. That always have been. Erik Karlsson has always shown moments where I'm like, this guy's actually a defenseman. And he had a lot of those ever since his Achilles injury. Those have been exacerbated. And I think Cale Makar shows items like that where he struggles in a defensive zone. Noah Dobson has struggled at times in his defensive zone, but I've seen him taking steps this year to shore things up defensively, and I've seen him taking steps to become more of an offensive powerhouse. Those are, again, I cannot be more bullish and more excited about Noah Dobson's future.
He's 21 years old who played limited ice time. So, I mean, you're going to make defensive mistakes. It's going to happen. That being said, what's the cure for that? You put a really solid defensive player out there with them. Why did it didn't work in San Jose until they actually broke the Burns and him up? Because they both play the same style game. Instead of playing a solid defensive defenseman with both Burns and Karlsson, they tried to put the two of them together. That's why it didn't work. You can't have two like players out there doing the same style. It just doesn't work. Not from the defensive end anyway.
Yes, but again, long story short, excited about Noah Dobson, talking about Scott Mayfield, right? It depends on who would be coming back as the NHL-ready defenseman. I said, right, if you weren't getting an NHL-ready defenseman, I wouldn't be shocked at all if the asking price on a guy like Scott Mayfield was 2 first-round picks if you're looking just at draft capital. And again, we've opined on it. Who are the right defensemen that are out there? Hampus, Lindholm. And you go down the list, there's not a lot of those defensemen out there this offseason. So if the Islanders still want to be semi-competitive and they still want to say, hey, we don't want to just go ahead and throw, Joe Montanats up there to be the right defenseman next year. We want to be able to trade for a guy that we're interested in. You might be able to get a guy young or close to on breaking his way into the NHL and get a first-round pick in exchange for Scott Mayfield.
Again, it doesn't have to be a young guy. It could be a veteran, somebody maybe $2 million, because they don't have to play 19 minutes a game or 17 and a half minutes a game.
So you think real quickly you can find yourself even a stopgap guy who maybe a team has fallen out of love with, a guy who maybe has 2-3 years left in his career, a guy who is an aged veteran. I'm going to use a guy like an Andy Green or something like that to fill the empty slot for 2 years.
Absolutely.
Okay.
You're talking about a bottom pairing defenseman. You're not talking about a top 4 guy. I look at the top 4 as being set. And I'm going to say again, it should be Dobson and Pelech, Pulock and Salo. That's who it should be. Those should be the pairings going forward, in my opinion. And your bottom 2 could be, either it could be anybody. You could throw Aho out there, but he's got to have a real solid defensive defenseman with him. And if not, you can, maybe if it's not Aho, you could pick up a couple of guys. It's okay. I mean, the only constant is change in the NHL. You can't keep the same cast and crew together, particularly one that's never won anything. But you know what? There's nothing wrong with moving a Scott Mayfield. Why? Because of the value he has going forward. Try to refresh your team now so the fall won't be so hard and fast.
Yes, and again, adding those draft picks in a deep draft this year and a deep draft next year is crucially important, especially as you see a lot of the pieces that were the core of the Islanders are on long deals and are older. The only way to replace those are going to be drafting well. So you better hope your amateur scouts are having a hell of a time out there and are the best of the best in the NHL. That's for certain. But we talked about Mayfield. We talked about a few trade items, grumpy old man. Now we had talked about what will Cal Clutterbuck get, what will Parise get if moved, what will Chara, what will Andy Green get, what will players of that ilk be receiving return. Now that didn't happen to mention in the Kevin Kurtz's article because I think those guys. Oh, it did.
Oh, absolutely. I was going to bring that up. You want to know? He said those guys would get at best.
What's that?
Mid-round draft picks.
He thought Parise would get a mid-round draft pick.
Yep, mid-round draft picks.
Kevin Kurtz, I got one thing to tell you, Kevin Kurtz. This is the wacky and crazy time period. Teams always overpay for players who have shown that they can do it before in the past and who have playoff experience. They just do.
We'll see.
I can see, as I said again, realistically, what do I expect? Parise, second-round pick. Kyle Clutterbuck, third-round pick. Chara, Andy Green, those are late picks if you even move them. That's how I look at that. Those guys are not going to get you huge returns. Look at your Braden Colburns of last year, 6th-round pick for a guy who was a 7th-pairing defenseman. Simple as it is, to add you a little bit of depth. Just what it is.
Yeah, that's true. But that's us making the deal. We tend to overpay for everybody. So
everybody overpays at the NHL trade deadline, grumpy old man.
Okay.
I don't know how many more times. If I could say that, if someone wants to teach me French, if someone wants to teach me Spanish, if someone wants to teach me a whole bunch of languages, I can give that to Grumpy in a different language every time. I feel like I tell you that teams always overpay at the NHL trade deadline.
I would just like to see who Lamoriello in particular identifies as the core of the team.
Yes, absolutely.
Because, that really has a whole lot to do with it too, right? I say Brock Nelson, if you get a good offer for him, he should be available. Why? Because he has no trade clause. I'm not saying he's going to be traded, but that's a guy, since he doesn't have a no trade clause, you could send him anywhere and you can get something for him. Now, are they going to move him? I doubt it, but just for the exercise, who are the guys who are available, who could get some value back? I always thought Nelson, Beauvillier, and Mayfield. Those are the 3 position players who I think have the most value, who you could actually deal. I don't want to get rid of Anthony Beauvillier. Why? He's 24 years old. He might not be the greatest thing ever, but you know what? He brings some life to our offense and some life to our team. We're slow. That's the biggest concern for me going forward. We're not really quick, fleet of foot. We're just not. We need to get guys who have some speed back there, particularly on defense.
I will say this here too. We had talked about what the value of a guy like Varlamov will be. And we had talked about the goalie market. And Kevin Kurtz also addresses this as well in the article. And again, I think this one's accurate as well. He said Marc-Andre Fleury is going to be the number 1 goalie on the board. There's no doubt about it. If he wants to be traded, he's going to bring you the most value, no questions asked. And then they say, well, a guy like Varlamov, it's a fantastic constellation prize. This is a guy who has a lot of playoff experience in the last few years, and again, has played better since after the All-Star break. And they're making a case for Varlamov, again, number 2 goalie off the board. Now, what do you think a guy, grumpy old man, and let's opine on, because right, we are a week and 2 days, away from the NHL trade deadline. The NHL trade deadline is not this Monday, but the Monday after.
That's why.
First, I was about to say it's 9 days away. We're doing this on Saturday evening, so it's less than 9 days away.
That's why you have to make sure that you do a podcast next Saturday. Now, I'm sure we're going to do on Monday night. I'm certain of that.
A draft day special podcast a trade deadline. I'm getting excited for the NHL draft or NHL draft. But
if I could do it live, I would. If I could do it myself, I would.
Do what live?
Anything. I don't know how to do it. TJ, everyone knows TJ's the brains of the operation. I just show up. TJ does everything on this show. Everything. He's the best unpaid intern I've ever had.
Thank you, Grumpy. Anyway, kind of getting back to the point, what do you think Varlamov could go for? What do you think, right? I think he's consensus out there in the market, clear number 2 goalie at the trade deadline. There's a lot of teams that are goalie hungry, and you're looking down the board, right? I mean, some of these teams have their core are older players. And I think the most you're going to be able to get for a guy, the most you're going to be able to get for Varlamov is, again, if he does not have you on the 16-team no-trade list, because there is a modified no-trade clause in Varlamov's contract. There's 16 teams that he's waived that he does not want to go to. But the teams I think you can get the most for Varlamov are teams with an aged core. Teams with the core where they're looking at it and saying, okay, we've got Alexander Ovechkin, we've got, Nick Backstrom, we've got John Carlson that are all on the bad side of 30. We need a legitimate, playoff caliber goaltender who could help us win a cup.
The problem is most every team that's a contender is right up against the cap. So, and he's got 2 years, he's got this year and another year left on his deal at $5 million per. So I don't know if there's a way for us to eat salary or whatever. I'm sure you could make it work, but that would mean Lou would have to be creative. So that's probably not going to happen.
You would have, just really quickly to answer that question, the most you can ever retain when you trade a player is 50%. Varlamov's contract AAV is $5 million. If you really wanted to, you could go ahead and say, we're going to retain a $2.5 million cap hit for the remainder of this season and next year. Or if the team has free agents that are coming up this offseason and they just need some for this year, you can go ahead and retain. Oh, well, you don't want to retain, but you can go ahead and take a bad contract on a one-year deal coming back this way. So you can get creative. That's how you can get creative with trying to make sure it works regarding the cap for some of these teams that may have, up against the ceiling.
Right. We could take like their backup goalie to also help offset some of the costs. Just somebody who play behind Sorokin, because Sorokin's the man in net now. Very obvious.
Sorokin going forward is a guy who's playing 55 to 60 games a year.
Right. And that's the way it should be. I mean, like I said, I was talking about moving Varlamov last off season. Why? I wanted Sorokin to be full-time starter. You can get a backup for pennies on the dollar. You don't need to pay a backup $5 million. It's a problem. Like most of our contracts, we overpay for guys we don't need to. And that's why we're in the problem that we're in. But I mean, if you get just an average backup, somebody going to give you 25 games a year, I would absolutely move Varlamov.
And here's the thing too. Varlamov is a good goalie. He's consistent. We can pretty much plug and play whatever goalie you want, a backup goalie, doesn't matter. They're going to be working with again, we have criticisms of Barry Trotz, but one of the huge pluses of Barry Trotz is he has Pierre Greco and Mitchell Korn. And again, they're like the goalie whisperers. You want to see a guy who's struggled over the last few years in his NHL career, and you go ahead and put him in the room with Pierre Greco and Mitch Korn, you're going to automatically see better production. So, I mean, that's definitely a big plus.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, and here's the thing, we're not in a cap crunch right now. We're not. We don't have a whole lot of huge deals to sign this offseason. I'd like to see us be proactive. We got a couple of guys coming up next year. Maybe we should go and try to lock them up going forward so we clear up our cap situation. We know what it's going to be for the next 5 or 6 years. That's what I would try to do. And in the offseason, I would still try to move some of the veterans off this team, even if it's not for as much value as they're worth, just to get them out of there so we could bring in new players, younger players, guys who can skate. It's a big, like I said, that's the big, for me, that's the biggest concern. The fact that our defense is slow for the most part. And of course, you're right. Chara and Green will probably, I'm just going to say probably be gone at the end of the year, but you never know. But we have to improve our team speed on defense.
Grumpy.
We've said the same thing about Andy Green for 3 years now. They keep on bringing him back for 1-year deals.
Okay, Chara's 44 and Green's 30. What is he, 38, 39 years old coming up? No, I'm sorry. They're both gone. You're not re-signing a guy who's going to be a 45-year-old defenseman who's been cashed. He was cashed his last year in Boston, cashed the last year he played in Washington, and he's been cashed this year here with the Islanders. So I don't think there's any way possible bringing back Chara. I don't think there's any way possible bringing back Green. If you're, did you ever give an answer, Grumpy, on what you think Varlamov will go for? Because I'll ask you that for the third time. But what do you think you can receive for Varlamov? I know you said, hey, we could bring this back. This is how we can make the cap work. But what do you think the value is we can get on a guy like Varlamov? Because, again, I think he's the clear number 2 if you're looking for a goalie. And this is assuming that Marc-Andre Fleury wants to be traded and wants to play for a different team. If Marc-Andre Fleury doesn't want to be traded, Varlamov's the clear number 1.
I'd maybe take a first-round pick next year or a second-round pick this year.
I wouldn't be opposed to that at all. I mean, you're looking at a guy who's the backup for us, a guy who was extremely serviceable. Great. Thank you for your time here with the organization. You did fantastic things, set records here, most shutouts in a season in the shortened year last year. But, we cannot pay our backup goalie $5 million a year.
No.
Especially if we're looking at this offseason, we need to look for ways to improve. If we want to entice a guy like a Philip Forsberg, who it does worry me that he's having a career season or career year in a contract season. That does bother me a bit, right? You look at, there are a lot of unrestricted free agents on the market this year that could really, help, move the needle in the right direction per se.
Yeah, and I don't know if we get a first-round pick next year, but usually – this year's picks are worth more than next year's picks.
Yeah, that's exactly how it works.
So I mean, if we have an option, second round pick this year or first round pick next year, I'm taking the first next year. These next 2 years are really deep drafts.
Yep.
We need to have a lot of options, a lot of picks in the next 2 years, because the cupboards are bare in the minors, and that's why he's crazy. Why would he want to trade this guy? Why does he want picks? Because there's a dearth of talent. Like I said, I'm proactive. I don't like to be reactive. I'm looking 2-3 years down the line. I'm not looking today or tomorrow. I want to see that we're set up years going forward. That's my whole premise of why I say things like that. Not just because, here's the thing. I don't feel this team is good enough, even if we get one other player, to contend for a Stanley Cup. I just don't see it. Just don't see it.
Yeah, there needs to be some moving and shaking. Players need to step forward. Noah Dobson has stepped forward in a big way, right? But we said when we had gone into the season, we said, how could the team get better, right? We had so many players that were getting older, right? You think that, hey, they're already at their peak, so they're slowly taking a step backwards. When you're at the peak of your NHL career, when you start your 30s, you're not continuing to elevate your game unless you're a Hall of Famer, all-time great. It's just not how that works. You're slowly taking steps backwards. We said the only way that the Islanders as a unit could move forward is if we had huge step forwards from Noah Dobson's, which he has this year. We needed to have a huge step forward from Oliver Wahlstrom. He hasn't been given a chance to do that this year. And so you look at how can we make our team better, right? If guys like your Oliver Wahlstroms take the huge step forward and they grow into the spot and the potential of what we all had them slotted into, that's how you can mask a little bit of the team getting older. And if you bring in some outside pieces and a little bit more youth, that's how you're able to do that.
And that's, well, why would you want to trade Anthony Beauvillier? He's only 24. Because he is what he is at this point in time. He's not going to be he's a streaky performer who, when he's hot, he lifts all boats. He absolutely does. Look at the line he plays on with Nelson, right? It's not a mistake that Nelson's starting to score goals because Beauvillier is playing better. That's just the way it is. It's always been like that since they've been put together. That's why he was so good with Barzal. They worked so well together. He, Eberle, and Barzal. Because when Barzal is going great and Beauvillier is going great, you could just drag Eberle along with them. They were a good fit. And for me, it's like, okay, so who are our core pieces once again? Wahlstrom, you're right, has to step up. Is Barry going to give him more of a shot next year? I have to think he will. It'll be his third year in the system, very similar to Dobson. I have to think so. Is Bellows going to be given a legit shot next year? We're going to have to move somebody out to give him that shot. He's a top 6 player for us, without a doubt. He just needs a legit shot.
Here's the thing too with Oliver Wahlstrom. People at the beginning of this season were saying Oliver Wahlstrom's finally going to be given his shot to play on the first line. He's played so well, and I said, ladies and gentlemen, look at last year's the barometer. He's not going to flip the switch and say, Barry said, all righty, here you go. Here's your chance and opportunity. I said that last year. And the reason I'm making that point is because I do believe this upcoming year he will get a chance to crack the top six, and he should. So, we talk about, hey, chances just shouldn't be given automatically to players. I think his 5-on-5 play, again, he doesn't play enough 5-on-5 minutes to continue to improve his 5-on-5 play. People say his 5-on-5 play is not great. I get it. You don't get better if you don't get any experience doing so. So a young guy like that needs to play more 5-on-5 minutes to improve. The more experience he gets, he'll make mistakes. As we always say with young players, they make mistakes as they're getting and they're learning. But as they start getting a little bit more of a stronger basis and foundation, you find out that, holy crap, wow, look at this. He can grow a lot more than players we've got. And once the mistakes are through, he's something special, i.e. Noah Dobson's.
Right. But here's the thing. You'll find out if he has that ability. Right now, he hasn't been the opportunity for us to find that out yet, to be honest with you, right? But I mean, I feel he's going to be a really good right wing. He can shoot the puck and he can score. Everybody wants that. He's not a liability defensively. Will he make the occasional mistake? Sure. But it's not the end of the world for what he brings on the offensive side of the puck. And that's where we need help. I don't know. But once again, if you're moving him up, who are you dropping down? Who are you able to move off the roster? If Kiefer Bellows shows enough where he can stick on the first line and works with Matt Barzal, what does that do for Anders Lee? What does it do for Anthony Beauvillier? Would Anders Lee be fine playing on the third line? Where I don't have a problem with being on the third line. I mean, I don't know. Those are questions that you really have to ask the players on your team and see how they feel about it. There has to be change, though. You can't just roll out the same cast and characters that didn't win a Stanley Cup the last 2 years and are just older and expect them to get better. Even if you're not able to move some of those guys, they can't have a featured role anymore. They have to be dropped down, and better players have to be added on the top. And that's going to be the toughest thing when you're trying to transition from the last group to the new group. And that's why I'm so bullish on getting draft picks, a lot of them the next 2 years, in extremely deep drafts.
We've got, as we mentioned before, strong pieces to build around. You've got the making of what could be successful. It's how do you manage? How are you going to operate in this week and a half window, right? We talk about what could set the team for future success. Got to have draft picks. Got to be able to hit on your picks, right? This is the first step needed in order to allow yourself to build a strong and steady foundation. Are you going to take the steps to put yourself in a position to do that? We'll find out in the next week and a half. That's for certain, Grump.
And I will say another thing. When we're drafting the next couple of years, skill, skill, skill. I just want skilled players. That's the way the NHL is played now. That's the way NHL hockey is played now. Don't go back to playing how it was in the 90s. That time is over. It's skill that wins. Talent. Look at the way the rules are being called. You touch a guy with your stick, it's a penalty. I mean, that's why it's so key. You can't go in and draft a whole bunch of Simon Holmstroms or Alexander Lundkrantzes or grinder types. You need guys who have talent, like the Three Amigos.
Oh, there it is, the Three Amigos.
But seriously, that's what the team needs. If you want the team to get better in the long run and have a smoother transition, you have to load up your team with talented players, not more, well, gosh, they can play a bottom six role. No, you need top six players, not bottom six guys. You can get bottom six guys from anywhere. Jarnac could come in and play a bottom six role. You don't have to pay them anything. You get younger, the really good players, you get through the draft.
Absolutely.
Let's say Detroit. Should Detroit have drafted Lucas Raymond, or should they gone for like some ham and egger, some grinder type?
Lucas Raymond was a top 5 pick.
Well, that's what I'm saying, though. But, let's say we're picking top 10. Should we pick a grinder type or a guy who just, you know what, this kid's oozing talent?
Grumpy. Stop. Grinder types very rarely are picked top 10. Come on.
We drafted Simon Holmstrom when there were 3 infinitely more talented players who were selected right after him because he fit the style.
Real quickly, I'm not disagreeing with that, but you just said grinder type in the top 10. Simon Holmstrom, what was he, 17th pick? Or was he even later, 20-something?
What
do you mean it doesn't matter? I'm just saying, right?
It's the mentality of what we're looking for. Well, gosh, he's a solid two-way player as opposed to a guy, man, he's electric. Man, he's a goal scorer. This kid's fantastic.
Holmstrom was 23rd. You're in top 10. Every top 10 pick you should have always should be an ultra talented player. When you start moving further on down the board, then you're looking at, okay, guy maybe didn't produce very much, but I like what he can do here. I like how quick he can get into full stride. I like how agile he is. I like how he can move with the puck. I like his vision on the ice. I like that he's got a quick snapshot. Maybe he doesn't have a great slap shot. Maybe his wrister isn't fantastic, but he's got a quick release. So like you're looking at certain things for 18-year-old kids, right? The top 10 should always be guys that they have all these things, and on top of it, they produce, right? When you start drifting further on down the board, it's more of a crapshoot in that nature. And again, I'm not trying to defend their pick of Simon Holmstrom. You know, I believe as we said it already, right? The 3 Amigos are better selections. That being said, right? The top 10 is, I think it's a little bit of a stretch, though, Grump.
Okay. But my point is the mentality of this regime drafting is not to go for the most talented player. It's to go for somebody who fits the system. That's what they've done.
One exception.
Yeah, because he dropped a whole round. That's the reason why. That's the only reason why. But if given their druthers, well, who fits Barry's system? No. I'm sorry. You always draft the best player, not somebody who is a fit for your system. Not at 18 years old, you don't. You take the best, most talented player. That's what you do. Like I said, if it's a defenseman, you take him. But here's the thing. If you have a defenseman rated just as highly as a whole bunch of wingers, where's your team need? It's on wing or center. That's where you draft them. And here's the thing. You get good young players, then it's easier to move a guy, and I'll just throw the name out because of his trade value, like a Brock Nelson going forward. Like I said, Nelson's not going anywhere. You just shake your head. I'm just telling you that that's how good teams operate. That's how good teams operate. Right now, we've had 3 years in a row without a first-round draft pick, and that's hurt us. That's hurt us going forward.
2 years, I think.
Well,
2 years in a row. We had Simon Holmstrom in 2019.
Yeah.
2020.
So we didn't have a first-round draft pick for 3 years. He was a consensus second-round draft pick.
Okay. Well, you picked him the tail end of the first round. Sometimes teams make dumb decisions like that. Our team did that. Simple as that. That being said, Grumpy, let's get into our ad read for today's podcast. Today's podcast is brought to you by Grumpy. Do you know who?
DraftKings.
That's right, DraftKings. The NHL season has been packed with dirty dangles, hat tricks, and big wins. As the action rolls on, DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL, has your shot to win big, too. New customers can bet just $1 on any team and get $150 in free bets if they win. That's right. A bump in the win column for your team means free bets for you. If Sportsbook isn't available in your state yet, you still have a shot to light the lamp. Everyone can play for huge cash prizes with DraftKings Daily Fantasy Hockey Contest. And DraftKings is giving all new customers a free shot at millions of dollars in their top prizes with their first deposits. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use the promo code THPN and bet just $1 on any NHL team and get $150 in free bets if they win. That's promo code THPN at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL. You must be 21 years or older. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com for full details. Well, hold on, Grump. I don't know if I've been doing this wrong. I think all I have to do is include all that gobbledygook with all of the phone numbers and where you can do it. I just think I have to include that in the notes so we don't have to read that anymore. So if you want to see how you can get help with gambling issues, see the notes below. Look at that, Grumpy. That's going to save us a whole bunch of time on the ad read. You're muted.
Yeah, that's smart.
Thanks for
Maybe
that.
You should have read it. Maybe you should have read it the first 100 times that you've been reading that.
I usually go ahead and pop it up and I just read exactly what they say, but I actually read the instructions today, and I think that we don't have to read all the extra gobbledygook. But
Isn't it typical? What do I need? Instructions? What do I need those for? I know I put this engine together and I got 7 leftover parts, but man, it looks good to me.
It looks like it works.
Instructions? I didn't need those.
SP says here, Kevin Kurtz suggested we can get a first and an NHL player for Mayfield. I'd take that immediately.
Absolutely.
Brandon Gaines says, what time was the podcast supposed to start? Today at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
8 o'clock TJ time. That's what time it started.
What's that mean, Grump? What's TJ time?
Quarter after, 20 after 8.
Oh, bullshit. It's like 10. We were running 10 minutes behind. We had to make sure we were on the same page. Ponyboy Curtis says here, Grump, getting adjusted as soon as a screen comes on. Laughing my ass off. He does that every single time. I tell him before, we have a 3-minute countdown window. I say, Grumpy, you ready? He's like, yeah. And I always see him getting everything adjusted right as we start. Getting his little mic on, moving his little computer around. It always gives me a laugh.
That's all right. Works for me.
Hey, that's what it is. Brother number 3 says, and again, we're not reading every comment. We're just reading comments that we had starred through that we think will help, provide context and information and spur on conversation. Brother number 3 says, Washington is on pace to claim the second wild card spot with 101 points. In order for the Islanders to end the season with 102 points, they would have to win 24 of the remaining 27 games. Lesai. Yeah, so I mean, they're pretty much mathematically eliminated at the moment. Not going to happen.
The thing is, you want to be picking in the top 10.
Yes.
That's the whole. You want to be picking in the top 10.
And, that's just to put it in perspective, right? We're not making the playoffs this year. We can dream on it. It's like, you go down on Christmas morning and you maybe have an idea of like, oh, as a kid, like, oh man, it'd be great if I had this. And you knew it wouldn't happen the days before eBay or Amazon. You're like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if this happened? But you know that it wasn't coming, right? It's not coming on Christmas morning. We're not making the playoffs. It's as simple as that. But Brother Number, there's a lot of things to look forward for going forward. I'll tell you one thing. We are going to have we'll have a lot of people breaking down this year's NHL draft prospects once we know exactly what type of picks we have upcoming, and a lot of guests to talk about, again, what ideology we have going forward and what we should implement.
I like how you just called him Brother Number, like 3. That adding that 3 was too much for you.
Brother number 3. I just call him. He's my brother. He's brother number. Drew L says Grumpy is being grumpy today for once. Earlier on, I think he was. Frank K says here, where has this team been all year? It's annoying.
That's for me. That's a big question. Was it, hey, we're just complacent. We're happy. We're getting paid. We get to play on the first line. Doesn't matter how poor we are. Did we not have the legs to do that? Did we only start playing since we got demoted? Did we only did we only start playing better because we don't want to be traded off the team? We want to show value to Lou. Are we playing better because we want to be traded off the team and we don't want to be here anymore? There's a lot of questions that have to be answered. I think it's the fact that we're a little bit complacent, and we wanted to make sure that we proved we still deserve to be here. But as a GM and a coach, doesn't that kind of raise your eyebrows a little bit? Saying, you know what? This guy dogged it the whole year. All of a sudden he turns it on at the end. As a coach, that pisses me off. And a GM, like, you know what? We didn't think this guy was what we thought he was.
Well, I think they ascribe to the thought of, here's the thing. They've said it already, and I think this is what our ownership, management, and coach believes. It was just an unfortunate culmination of shitty events that happened to us earlier on in the year, and that's the reason why we weren't able to be successful. It's because of this. It's because of that. Every single excuse in the book, and now that the excuses are gone, our team's healthy, we're playing like the good old Islanders, and this is what we should have been playing like all year. That's, I think, that is my worry, that's what they believe.
So this should carry through when we're playing 10 really top-level playoff teams the last 12 games of the year. Okay, let's see what happens. Or once a trade deadline is over, are they going to go back to what they were? Or when we start playing any type of good team, are we going to have poor performances? Yeah, we're able to beat the bad teams. We've been able to do that all year. We just haven't been able to match up with the good teams. What happens when we play Carolina again? Those are games. Those are the games I care about. The Tampas, the Floridas. Those are the teams that, you know what, you ever want to get to the Stanley Cup final, you're going to have to beat at least two of those teams. Good luck. The Rangers.
The freaking Rangers, Grump.
I think, honestly, if we play like we played the last couple of games, we'll beat the Rangers. I don't think the Rangers are that good. Certainly not defensively. Shesterkin's been unconscious this year, and they're good offensively, but I still am not sold on them defensively.
I was about to say, I mean, what I worry is, and I get flashbacks to when the Islanders used to be really shitty. I'm talking about the early 2010s, the late 2000s, where we would be almost mathematically eliminated from the playoffs. We'd be sitting at the number 1 spot, number 2 or number 3, and when we win a whole bunch of meaningless games towards the tail end of the year, enough for players to keep their job, and enough to screw up a good draft pick position. I just get flashbacks to that, and I just kind of worry about it, Grump. Are they irrational for me to get those flashbacks, or do you think that could legitimately happen?
No, that wouldn't surprise me because that's how we've always played. Where we have, hey, you're in line for the top 3 pick in the draft in a 4-player draft, and all of a sudden you win a bunch of games down the stretch and you click 5th in a 4-player draft, and you get stuck with Michael Del Cole or Scott Sissons or guys like that. It's always been like that.
Leon Draisaitl was in that draft, wasn't he?
I don't know.
Oh, shit. You're going to make me pull that back up. Let me see.
Yeah, I really don't know what year. I don't know what year he was drafted.
Don't worry, I'll get it for us here. All righty. He was the 2014 NHL draft. Yeah, Leon Draisaitl was a 3rd overall. Aaron Ekblad, Sam Reinhart, Leon Draisaitl, Sam Bennett, Michael Del Cole.
It was acknowledged as a 4-player draft.
Oh my God, yeah.
So what should you do? What should you do there? Trade out.
Shit, I'll tell you this much. There were a lot of good players that went in that year's draft. Michael Del Cole, for as early as he was one of the most unimpressive.
Because he couldn't skate. If you can't skate, you shouldn't go in the top 5. And all those other guys can skate. It's about hockey's a skating game.
You remember when and that's something that we did a lot of under Garth Snow. We would pick guys with those high picks that were not good skaters. We did the same thing with Griffin Reinhart. Again, we were able to fleece Edmonton by trading them Griffin Reinhart, but he was another guy that they were always like, oh, well, he doesn't look like he has to skate very hard because he's just so positionally aware. He's fantastic. I remember, Grump, when you and I watched him in the World Juniors or the championship for the, the Memorial Cup, we're like, yeah, he doesn't skate very well.
Can't skate. Don't tell me, well, he's smart. He can't skate. I don't care how smart you are. If you can't skate, you can't play. Zdeno Chara.
I just go down the list, right? Jesus Christ. Vatanen or Varatinen's in that draft. Nylander, Ehlers, Jacob Vrana, Dylan Larkin. Oh, Alex Tuch, Tony DeAngelo. There's so many fantastic players in that year's draft. A lot of them had contributed an immense amount for their teams, and we've got 2 first-round picks, and we get Josh Hosang and Michael Del Cole.
I mean, Tavares wasn't a great skater either, but he was so good at doing.
He's so fantastic with everything else. Is right.
He makes other players better. Michael Del Cole didn't have any of that. Nicholas Ehlers, I think Ehlers went 7th, I think, in that draft. I mean, where did Nylander went?
Ehlers went 9th and Nylander went 8th. I'm just saying, like, right, you had those guys who went, right afterwards. I mean, you look at the NHL games, Michael Del Cole's only played 112 NHL games. Oof.
I mean, were they really sold on Michael Del Cole?
So you want to hear something funny really quickly? In that year's NHL draft, there was 30 at the time period, 30 first-round picks. Only 6 of those 30 individuals played less than 150 or have played less than 150 games in their NHL careers. Michael Del Cole is one of them. Julius Honka, Connor Bleakley, Nikita Sherbak, Josh Hosang, and John Quinville. So out of the 6 players in that draft who have played less than 150 NHL career games, we got 2 of them in that year's first round.
They did take a flyer on Hosang.
Yeah, he was
Because
again ultra talented. Yeah.
he had the aforementioned issues, whatever. But they took a flyer on him. And I had no problem with them taking a flyer on him at 28. I think it was 28, right? Where he was drafted.
Yeah, he was 28.
I don't have a problem with that, taking a flyer on a guy who's a high-end talent. I mean, it's not something you'd see Lou Lamoriello do.
Mm-mm.
I mean, sometimes you catch lightning in a bottle like that.
Yeah, I just laugh at it. I think under 126 players in that year's first round played under 125 games. We had 2 of them selected in the first round, 6 of them in the first round. It's just funny to look back on those, to look at the funny little coincidences. And I remember, I was like, I couldn't remember if Draisaitl was in that year's draft, but think about it. He was a third overall selection in that year's draft. Crazy stuff, Grumpy. Crazy stuff. But Chris Smith saying, Grumpy Man, do you think Vancouver will make the playoffs?
No.
Okay. Quick there. DB Hooper. Whoa. DB Hooper now, Grumpy Old Man. Defensive back Hooper is with a little Stephen Curry says, Jesus, TJ, you taking children's Tylenol because it's not working. I'm on the mend. Tomorrow I'll be fantastic because tomorrow during the TJ and the Grumpy Old Man podcast at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can find that in the link in the description below or as a featured channel on our YouTube page. I will be rosy, feeling fantastic, bringing my A game, just like we're doing tonight. Great. You like a little segue, Grump?
Yeah.
Oh, come on. Don't hate the player. Drew L says, yeah, TJ's voice just is lower and sounds more stern when he's sick.
Yeah, he could be he's nasty. That's how he usually talks off the podcast. Very nasty.
Oh, I kick it in. Pony Boy Curtis says, boys, who do you think is on this new account? I'm a longtime follower, big fan. I just want to see if you guys really know me. Oh, I don't know.
I thought that it was Tony Cheese.
I don't. It's not Tony Cheese.
I know it's not.
I'm going to go out on a limb. It's the Wicked 50 Cal.
Okay.
Maybe. I don't know, Grumpy. Who do you put it as? Maybe Jer Ben or the Wicked 50 Cal? I don't know. I don't know who Pony Boy Curtis is.
I don't know. You don't know who Pony Boy Curtis is. We just had that discussion last night.
Oh, no. Not like that. I mean, like who the listener is who created the new account called Pony Boy Curtis. I don't know. Maybe. I don't know, Grumpy.
Who'd you think it was?
I said maybe Jer Ben, the Wicked 50 Cal. I don't know, Grumpy.
I don't think it's Wicked 50 Cal. He just signed on as himself earlier in the week.
Okay. I don't know, Grumpy. I just wanted you to take a guess.
It's going to be someone on YouTube. It's going to be someone on YouTube.
Oh, there we go, Grumpy. Very specific. Joseph C. says here, the Rangers need 2 top 6 forwards, maybe a third pairing defenseman too. They're not making it far in the playoffs if their 5-on-5 play and offense doesn't improve.
Yeah, I don't think they're going far in the playoffs either. Matter of fact, they've had a better year than I expected them to have, which is concerning to me because they're really young and they're just going to get better.
Shesterkin has been, again, you talk about the team, right? Shesterkin hasn't played fantastic the last few outings. He's been fantastic as a whole this year. I mean, tonight, what is it? It's like 4-3 between the Dallas Stars. Again, I'm not watching the game, but you're just talking about the guy who had, right, unbelievable numbers, putting up video game-esque numbers like a 9.45 save percentage. I think that's slowly starting to tilt down. Again, I'll be interested. Can you keep that up an entire season? I mean, Shesterkin's played a lot of games this year.
Yeah, well, they might rest him a little bit down the stretch. I mean, we're, 3 touchdowns and a safety behind them in the standings. So I don't think they have to worry about us catching them. But certainly you'd like to be, get home ice advantage for the first round of the playoffs.
Yeah, he's had a fantastic year, but, I always wonder, can he always keep up that pace? He's been unbelievable this year. Can he keep it up? Anthony R. says, yeah, but who is the defenseman coming back with the first round pick for Scott Mayfield? So you think you want more of a vet to fill the slot for a few years. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, you have Salo, who's going to be basically a rookie next year. You have Dobson, who's just a third-year player. I have no problem bringing in somebody with a little bit of experience to be a third-pairing guy. Or if he's a left-handed defenseman, if you now feel comfortable with Salo getting top 4 minutes, I know that they're saying that Toronto's looking to get rid of Dermott. he's a guy who could fit here. He's on a manageable contract also. Somebody like that, perhaps. I mean, there's a lot of guys who fit that description, honestly.
George P. says, waiting on the dates for the Josh Bailey parade and the bronze statue dedication.
Keep waiting.
Hey, man, he scored, Grumpy. He scored 3 goals in the last 2 games, Grumpy. Time to go ahead and enshrine him in the Hall of Fame.
Maybe Barry said, if you don't skate near the damn net, we're going to withdraw.
We're going to send you a one-way ticket to Siberia. Well, it's even worse now doing that. Shooters Puck Hockey says, I say Grumpy does his own show on Saturday if TJ can't.
Yeah, I would do that, but I don't know how to do it.
If we do one, and maybe we'll do something later on in the evening. I have no idea. I'll keep you guys up to date. Did the Islanders play on Saturday evening?
I don't know.
These are the things I
need. That's like a week from today.
I know, Grump. Give me a sec.
I live in the moment, not like you.
Oh, good gracious. Let me pull it up here.
I'm just saying.
The Islanders do play Saturday. It's a Saturday afternoon game.
Oh, well, I'm sure you won't be doing that.
Maybe I will. I don't know. I don't know.
Is it a Hulu game?
I couldn't tell.
That's my concern.
It's against the Dallas Stars at 1 or 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. So we'll have to talk about it. Keep your head on a swivel. Make sure you're paying attention to your notifications. Now, apparently, I can go ahead and post on YouTube. I could post like a post on YouTube that's not a video. So now we have the ability to update people on YouTube alone also. So woohoo, moving up in the world. DB Hooper says, tell your wife, TJ, that you can't miss a podcast. It's about 11 years from becoming profitable. Paige, can't miss the podcast. We're 11 years from becoming profitable.
That's a lot of years.
Oh, goodness. And SB said, as predicted, lots of fans jumping right back on the Josh Bailey train. Also, lots of fans saying that we should stand pat because of, 2 good games. Wow.
Yeah, no. See, that's what I'm afraid of. That's I'm
scary.
Petrified that management is going to think that way too. Well, gosh, look at how good we played against Winnipeg and Columbus. Man, we're right there. Here's the thing. At the end of the year, we're playing Tampa, Carolina, Florida, all the good teams, Washington. We're going to lose most of those games. They might be competitive, but we're going to lose. I guarantee you we're not beating Carolina. That I can guarantee you that. Or Tampa or Florida. We wouldn't beat them if we played them 100 times a year. They're just way better than us. All of them. And they're kryptonite with their playing style. Kryptonite.
Philip N here saying the Islanders are 2-9 in overtime / shootout games. If they won some of those games, the season may be different. Yep. Even if you won every single one of those games that you lost, let's say you were 11-0 in overtime and shootout, you'd only have 9 more points in the standings. You still would be well out of a playoff spot. Unfortunately, I wish that, flipping a few of those games could have made it, a little bit more different. But I mean, seriously, even if you had flipped those games and you were 11-0 in overtime / shootout, you would still be
9 points out of playoff spot. Washington's up by 20 on us. 20 points.
Yeah. 11 points out of the playoff spot with 5 games in hand over Washington. So think about that. Even if you won every single one of those games, you would still be out of the playoffs. Even if you caught every single one of those games up and also won every one of those games, you're still way out of the playoffs picture. Yeah. So unfortunate. It's unfortunate. Here's the thing. Washington has struggled big time as of late. And you think to yourself, I'm like, okay, even with Washington's massive struggles, right? And again, they've kind of had a rebound, but 6-3-1 as of late. But they had a time period over a 10-game stretch where they had like 2 or 3 wins over that 10-game stretch. And I'm like, yeah, the Washington Capitals play the New York Islanders on Tuesday. Let's see how that goes. I'm gonna give a barometer. Probably not great for the Islanders.
Probably not.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And then Thomas B says here, gents, now with the team winning 2 in a row, our award-winning general manager will not make any trades, especially now that Josh Bailey has come alive. Ooh.
Talk about that for a second, TJ.
Okay. Yeah. I'll tell you. I worry about that. And I think that's a lot of fans worry about as well. And again, I'm not sure if they're rational worries or it's just us, feeding into how can things go wrong. They go wrong any which way they can. And I think it's just going to further feed into that. But you have to feel like hopefully ownership, general manager, and head coach realize that the way the team is currently constituted needs a revamp and needs an update. You cannot roll out the same or very similar team next year and expect different results.
You would hope. I mean, okay, I know that Lamoriello's 953 years old, and he's not going to be around for a rebuild or whatever. We need to look for a succession plan. And the person who we hire should have some say in what goes on, not just whatever Lou says goes. And I would think that ownership has to look and say, you know what? Anders Lee hasn't looked good. Josh Bailey hasn't looked good. They're in their 30s now. Is this something that we want to keep perpetuating? Are these guys that we think can get better as they go on? The answer is no, of course. They have to be thinking that. Lou Lamoriello has to be thinking that. Can he make a gentle transition to the next grouping of players? I don't know. That's what we're going to find out. But the one thing that you can't do is just like he's done the last 2 years, just keep the same cast and crew and just expect us to win a Stanley Cup. That's not happening.
George P says, Josh is like a broken watch. It's right twice a day, and outside of that, worthless.
Well, that's what he has, usually one good game a quarter. And that's what he's had here. Let's see how he plays. When do we play next?
SP, we play on. Right? Yes, Grumpy. SB says, what would you say to this deal to Colorado, Varlamov, and to the Islanders, a 2022 third-round pick and a 2023 first-round pick?
You're not going to get both for him. I take it. If they offered a 2023 first-round pick, I'd jump at it. If they even have it. I mean,
I'm trying to pull up cap space. When I'm thinking about, what Colorado needs to prioritize, a goalie, sure, that helps. Defense is a huge need for them. Like the sense of urgency sometimes you see in their defensive zone is just nonchalant. And I mean, that needs to have a little bit more of a mindset change too. So like we talk about, hey, our team usually is very steadfast in the defensive zone. It's the exact opposite. Colorado gets like lulled to sleep at times.
Yeah, because everything comes too easy for them. They need some grit on that team. I know there's talk about, well, let's get Patrick Kane, let's get Claude Giroux, let's get the big names. They don't need a big name. They really don't. Kadri his performance this year has made them a two-line team. So that helps. They need some grit in the forward position and a defensive defenseman and a goalie. That's what they really need. Will they get that? I don't know. I'd love them to trade some of the guys. I'd love to trade them Parise and Clutterbuck for a second-round pick next year. I mean, I don't think they have a first or a second this year. So
they don't. That's correct.
Yeah, I mean, I'd move those guys for a second next year. That's a deep draft too.
I'm just looking at the cap space room they've got now. They've got they do have long-term injury they can go ahead and activate too. I think they've got about like $3.5 million.
Well, Landeskog, I think, just went on long-term injury.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay, never mind. That changes things up. I won't speak anymore about it because I'm not sure exactly about the inner workings of his injury. But Jeremy F here says, good evening, fellas. Good evening, Jeremy. It's Saturday night. Done right. He says, hope you're feeling better, TJ, feeling a little bit better. And have a great show and weekend. Thanks, Jeremy. Absolutely. And then Ponyboy Curtis also saying, maybe Matt Barzal is a locker room cancer.
Maybe not either. Maybe some of the vaunted veterans are the problem.
What do you mean by that, Grumpy?
Something to think about. Maybe. Maybe they're a little bit too big for their britches and talent level. Maybe. Just maybe.
Yeah, maybe, Grump. Maybe. Got a comment here from
John. I don't see how anyone in that locker room, with the exception of Chara, has any cachet when it comes to winning a Stanley Cup. Not a one.
What do you mean?
He's the only guy who's won a Stanley Cup on a team. For a team laden with veterans, one guy on the whole team's won a Stanley Cup.
But you said nobody has cachet besides him.
Right. For like being a Stanley, somebody's like, hey, you know what? I know what it takes to put you over the top.
I think they say I'm a vet, and there's only a handful of players that ever win the Stanley Cup. So
none of them on this team except for Chara. He's the only one who I'd be concerned about when it comes to Matt Barzal. Anybody else? What have you ever won? Don't tell me what you think Matt Barzal should be able to do. You haven't won anything.
John M. said, Grump, your Auburn shirt was sent, arriving between March 13th to the 27th.
It was a tough loss to Texas A&M yesterday by the Auburn. I think they used to be called the Auburn Tigers. I know they say War Eagles, but it used to be the Auburn Tigers.
They are the Auburn Tigers, okay. But they say War Eagle. So they say War Eagle. Hopefully you got, grumpy old man, an extra small, an XS, or maybe a child size shirt, because that's what Grumpy wear. What type of shirt size do you wear, Grump?
Double X.
Double X. Well, hopefully he's got a double X coming in the mail to you, Grumpy. And then we got a comment here from Frank K saying Noah Dobson is the best player on the team.
Close to it.
I was about to say, if we're looking at the best players who have been, who've really picked up their game over the last few months, there's a handful of them, right? I think Noah Dobson's played really well. I think Sorokin has played really well. I think to myself, Pellick has played well. There's a few guys that have really stepped up their game. I think Parise, again, not the best player, but players who have stepped up their game. I think Parise stepped up his game, and so has Palmieri.
Dobson has been fantastic the last couple months. Fantastic.
Yes, no doubt about it. I don't know how anybody can hate on Noah Dobson anymore. Matthew S. says here, Nelson and Lee should be together. I agree with that.
In a soup line.
What do you mean, Grumpy, in a soup line? You think they should be unemployed?
I didn't say that. You figure it out for yourself.
Oh, that's the only play. That's the only time you go to a soup line. Frank A. says here, Dobby is a stud. For certain he is.
Oh, I love that picture. So I'll put that picture back up there again. That's a neat looking picture right there.
You know what it says? Islander. It is a neat little picture. It's like a death metal Islander thing, Grump.
Yeah, I like it.
And then Jeremy Ford said, do you think Colorado is going to pull a Tampa with Landeskog going in for surgery, but coming back for the stretch run as the team announced? Landeskog has a $7 million AAV. They could fit Fleury for some. They could fit Fleury for some Islanders.
Or some Islanders.
I'm sorry, Islanders.
Yeah, without a doubt. Well, they'd be foolish not to, wouldn't they? You always have to take advantage of that rule.
They need to change that rule. They need to change up that rule. Here's the thing. As you start to see more and more teams employing that, what's to say a guy who's been banged up all season long, once you have yourself positioned and guaranteed a spot into the playoffs, what's to say? Because here's the thing. How many teams every single freaking year do you see where they'll say at the end of the year, oh, John Smith is out. He'll be getting surgery on his right hand. He'll be missing, 4 weeks over the offseason. Oh, a guy's got a little bit of a surgery here. He's got, a little bit of a hamstring injury here. We're going to let rest up. He's got this. Oh, he's got foot surgery. It needs to be done. How many of these surgeries do you see right as the NHL season ends that players have played with all season long? The way you allow them to take advantage of this, if Landeskog is injured, people are fighting through injuries all the time. And now you're giving the ability to let Landeskog leave, get healthy, which is fine. You could do that if you want. But now you're giving them the cap space, and you're not making the cap space applicable in the playoffs. That does give me a little bit of that always bothers me a bit. Something needs to be done about that, because you're seeing teams employ that now more often. Every single team has players who play injured all season long. I have no problem with the player taking time off to get surgery towards the tail end of the stretch so he's healthy for the playoffs. I do have a problem that every single year it seems like the best of the best teams are able to say, let's put a player aside and we can use their $7 million in cap space because he's a fantastic player, and we can add 2 or 3 really, really talented players to our roster. That I do have an issue with.
Yeah, that'd be great if we could do it retroactive, because that means we wouldn't be able to get Kyle Palmieri and Travis Zajac last year.
Say that again?
That would be, if we could have done it like and gone back in time, like retroactively, when Anders Lee went out, we wouldn't have been able to get Kyle Palmieri and Travis Zajac.
Here's the thing. Little different with the Anders Lee, and we talk about Kucherov, and we're going to talk about Landeskog. Anders Lee did not come back for the playoffs. See, like if the player still is out, I have no issue with it. But I do have an issue with what seems to be a reoccurring trend now where a top player goes out and he is injured, right? I'm not doubting the validity of his injury. I think that is true. But when he comes back in the playoffs, the cap just doesn't matter anymore. Well, doesn't matter if your team now, if we look at a snapshot here, maybe you're 10 or 15 million over the cap. It doesn't matter now. We're in the playoffs. Cap doesn't matter. Hey, the points don't matter at this point. That does bother me a bit.
It doesn't bother me that much. Let's say you get a whole bunch of guys who go on long-term injury. You're not going to be able to field a team during the regular season?
No. I'm not saying that. Hold on. You have players in your organization that you could field a team with. A whole bunch of players on long-term injury. This consistently, the last few years, we've seen a trend. It's been one player, one really skilled player who goes out, who gets healthy, so he's able to come back during the playoffs. But what the team could do is they could add a whole bunch of the trade deadline. Do we think it's convenient that, again, Landeskog goes out a week and 2 days before the trade deadline? Do you think that's convenient?
He's having surgery. I mean, and you're talking about one guy before this year. Now you're talking about two guys.
It's always the best teams that are doing this now. It was Tampa who did it 2 years in a row with Kucherov.
Okay. Kucherov was out the whole year until the playoffs last year.
And the year before, he was not. Year before, he left about halfway through the year and then came back. You remember that?
He had the hip injury. He had to have hip surgery. He didn't know if he was even going to come back. Those are tough surgeries.
Wink, wink, wink. Okay.
I don't have a problem with it.
I just have a problem that teams in the NHL playoffs, some teams are playing within the confines of the salary cap, but some teams could be playing with 15 more, 10 or 15 more dollars added on the cap hit. That I do have an issue with.
Okay. It's fine.
Man. Hold on. So what type of surgery is Landeskog having? He underwent knee surgery. Here's the thing. That knee surgery could be, I've got a little bit of a meniscus tear. I need to have my meniscus repaired. In reality, he could have been playing on a torn or slightly torn meniscus all season long. And now all of a sudden, they'll wait right until the trade deadline. They'll free up some cap space, get healthy, come back, and now we're going to have an extra $7 million on our cap hit that we don't have to worry about it when the playoffs start. I do have an issue with it. I don't care if Landeskog didn't play throughout the playoffs. I don't care. That's different. But when Landeskog comes back and is healthy for the playoffs, game one, I will have an issue with that.
Okay. So, again, TJ doing one of those things he likes to do. You have no idea if it's just a minor meniscus tear. How long you had a meniscus tear too, right? How long were you out?
I had different meniscus tears. One, I had microfracture surgery, which is different. They drill holes in the knee to get blood supply back in. That took months. But the meniscus tear I was only out for about 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks. So a simple meniscus tear doesn't take long. But would it shock me at all if a simple meniscus tear happens to lead him until the NHL playoffs start, and then game one or game two, he's ready? He's going to start skating, getting ready. But he's not 100% there yet. But as soon as the NHL playoffs start, he'll be ready to go full pace. Yeah, that's going to bring me an issue because a minor knee surgery like this, what type of knee surgeries, again, doctors who listen to this, what type of knee surgeries do you think allow you to be, because the NHL playoffs are only a month and a half, 2 months away?
Well, can I make a point?
Go ahead.
I think that this podcast would be much better, TJ, if they did microfracture surgery on your skull, so more blood would go to your brain.
Oh man! But
again, you kind of ruined the time of the joke because you just kept going on and on and on.
Oh, Grumpy. Well, because I'm okay, Grumpy. I remind you, I don't look at you on screen. The rare times I do, sometimes I say, what's going on? Because I'm trying to pull stuff up ahead of time. So I'm not looking at you on screen. That's why I didn't know you were giving me the cue. So I apologize, Grump. I apologize. I'm just saying, probably it's a little bit of a meniscus.
That's what you should be doing.
Oh, my God. When do the NHL playoffs officially start?
I don't know.
Hey.
Who knows? Let's see. The season for the Islanders,
May 2nd. They begin on May 2nd. So you're looking at about a month and a half, or 2 months, Would not shock me at all if this is a minor meniscus surgery that they're going to utilize because maybe he's been playing through pain. He'll be ready for the playoffs, and now they're going to have to be able to be 7. I'm telling you, put my tinfoil hat on. Minor meniscus surgery here. Going to take him magically 2 months to come back and healthy. As soon as the NHL playoffs begin, he'll be back in action. I promise you.
Okay. You know what? Let's see how this take ages. You know, like the Zdeno Chara only played that last game to break the record. We're probably not going to see him again for the rest of the year. And he was out 2 days later. He was back in the ice.
Okay, it wasn't 2 days later. He was out. He was out a week and a half. He was back. I'm just saying, what type of knee surgery has a quick bounce back time? It's not like he's getting ACL or MCL or LCL or PCL surgery. It's probably a meniscus tear that he had repaired. It's not like he's like, hey, I've got a dislocated knee. No, it's probably meniscus surgery that he's got going on.
Yeah, so he's going to miss some time. Couple, month and a half, 6 weeks, right? 6 weeks.
It's going to perfectly coincide with right when they're able to come back for the playoffs. Isn't that mighty convenient, Grump?
I think they have to come back before the end of the regular season.
No, not true.
To be on the postseason roster, I thought they had to.
Okay, so you can activate them right before the regular season ends.
Yeah, probably.
Right as the regular season ends. Rob L says, oh, look, Rob returns, grumpy old man. He speaks very badly. He says, this season's bad enough without Grumpy piling on with his negativity.
I don't think I've been negative at all. I'm trying to look for solutions.
On every time and says that you're super negative and there's no reason to be negative. He used to say that every time early on in the year and said, you're just super negative. This team's much better than you think. And now the team's been bad. We see him pop his head back up and he says, well, is it convenient that Rob pops up after 2 big wins the Islanders have in very convincing fashion?
I like Rob. I like Rob. It doesn't bother me what he says.
I'm putting my tinfoil hat on everything tonight, Grump. Put it on for everything.
I just want to say, I think I've been extremely positive today. I'm trying to look for a solution out of the mess that we're in. I'm a problem.
The mess is an issue, Grumpy, because this team is fantastic.
I'm a problem solver. That's what I do.
Oh, God, isn't that something? SP says trade deadline is literally a week away. We need to sell early. The way we're going to end up with the 13th or 15th pick, which would be the absolute, which would make this season an absolute bust.
We're not going to be 13th and 15th. We play some really good teams down the stretch. They'll beat us.
Okay, I just hope we don't continue to play this new refound or rekindled Islanders style of hockey that we've seen over the last 2 games. That would be awful.
They're going to be playing their starting goalies for a change, too.
George P. says, real fans never make excuses for losing. You point out losing out every time and kiss their ass nonsense. It gets more of it, not less.
That's right. Like I said, I know you mentioned that earlier, how, COVID this. I don't care. Every team had COVID. Every team
that's what they're going to say. That's what I think management believes, and that's what I think general management and head coach believes.
Yeah. And, most people believe whatever the team tells them because they don't really want to look. They want to look through the orange and blue glasses instead of just looking at what's really happening. We tell you the real story here. It's not a secret that we're always right.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
Absolutely. And then Jeremy Ford said, Austin Zarnak already with 1 goal and 1 assist tonight. Should he make the top 12 next year? I love his game, speed, tenacity, a 200-foot player, flexible positionally, and he's got a good attitude. How do you guys feel about him? I like Austin Zarnak. I was upset originally when we waived him. I was happy when we reclaimed him off of waivers. He should be playing. And once we trade off pieces off the Titanic of this season, he needs to be up in the NHL playing in every game shift.
He's a bottom 6 player for me, not top 6.
No, that's would I say top 6? I think I meant
he said top 12.
So he's a third line guy.
Should he be a top 12 guy next year? I think he's bottom 6. He'd never snip the first 2 lines for me. He's just not that talented.
Well, top 12 just means should he be in the lineup every night? That's third. You could be a bottom 6 guy, 12 forwards on the ice.
You realize? Oh yeah, top 12. Yeah, my bad.
Yeah. So should he play an everyday game? I think he should.
Yeah, he's a bottom 6 guy for me though.
Yeah. And I think he should be up once we trade pieces off. He needs to be up every single night. I loved what I saw with him in the limited sample size I did this year. And I think he really showed that he's got the effort. He plays the style that, he puts forth the effort that is needed and required to be Barry Trotz style of hockey. So I'd love to have him up with the NHL roster. Dave F says here, glad that Brock Nelson is showing up recently. Hopefully we can move him at the deadline. We know we can't move Bailey.
I agree, Dave.
Oh, man. Jeremy F said, could Zarnak carry the fourth line and move Cizikas up to the third line with Jean-Gabriel Pageau?
Yeah, I'm not. No, we have too many forwards under long-term deals. That's an issue, particularly as a whole bunch of them can't play. That's the worst case scenario. We have worst case scenario with our forward groups. Worst case.
Mark D here says, hey gents, I've been listening to you guys for a while now, during work and after the podcast is posted on Spotify, and never get to listen to you live. Grump, at first I didn't want to admit it, but you've been right all along about this team. I've officially joined your side. Great show, guys. Always a great listen. Thanks so much, Mark.
Thank you, Mark. You've joined the side of truth, justice, and the American way.
Is that like from a sitcom or something like that goes on?
It was Superman. And you can become a member of Grumpy's Groupies by ordering one of these shirts. On the link in the description below.
There it is, Gump. I like the segue. You can get a Barry in the Vet shirt as well. Thanks, Mark, there for commenting. And I always like hearing those where it's like somebody we don't even know, we don't see on the live stream. It's like, I've listened to you guys a long time just to say, hey, to pop in. I'm just like, oh, love to see everybody that listens to the show. I love always seeing the regulars, and I love meeting new people. It's just like, it's like we're in a bar. It's like a big Islanders bar where we just talk hockey. It's fantastic.
It is. That's the way I feel about the show.
Oh, absolutely. Trust me, we don't do it for anything else, but for talking with Islander fans and talking with you, Grumpy, and talking and having a conversation that I think most people in the Islanders cartel media refuse to have or just neglect, whether it's because, hey, it doesn't get as many clicks, or hey, because it's not as popular of an idea. They just don't have it.
Okay, here's the reason why they don't have it. They're not creative. They're not funny. And they're mostly, they have no talent. Let's just say that. They're not somebody you'd want to meet in a bar. If they were on fire, you wouldn't even piss on them.
Gracious. Drew Hills says, you guys think that Dobson should be in Pulak's spot for next season?
Absolutely. He and Pelech should be playing 23, 24 minutes a game. Absolutely. Second pairing should be getting 20 minutes a game, 21 minutes a game.
Dave F saying here, Varlamov has played great recently. Definitely a first rounder, should be coming back our way. Also move Mayfield now. He's been pretty bad the last few games. Here's the thing. Mayfield played poorly last year in the regular season. I thought he's played better this year in the regular season than he did last year, but his game always elevates in the playoffs just because he can get away with so much holding, clutching, and grabbing, cross-checking, and his physical play that he allows him to maul people down low just doesn't get called in the playoffs.
I still think it's going to be hard to get a first-round pick for Varlamov. So I don't think we'll be able to get a first-round pick this year for him. Maybe a first-rounder next year. But whatever you can. I don't want to move him for like a fourth-round pick, though. I mean, you can try to move him in the offseason then. See if you can get greater value for him. He makes too much money for a backup, though. And that's a hindrance. And he's 33, 34 years old, whatever he is. That's also a hindrance.
And then you got here, John A saying here, the fear of getting moved or getting chewed out by Lou Lamoriello and Trotz. The real question is, why did it take 50-plus games for this regime to take a stand with the veterans on this roster?
Because all they care about is the veterans on the roster, period.
Yep, John, because they care too much about the cachet in the league. Can't upset the apple cart too much when the vets struggle. Because, hey, how are you going to be known as the guy who is so understanding and loved and beloved? I don't know. When players don't produce, I've got a much quicker hand, or I would have a much quicker hand in saying, hey, dude, you got a producer, you're gone. I don't know. That's just my opinion on it. It has taken way too long for changes regarding lineup combinations and who should be out there in certain situations by Barry Trotz. Is it a mystery that yesterday on the power plays that we saw that were extremely successful, Josh Bailey was not involved? Is that do you think that's a coincidence? I know that Bailey had a few points yesterday and a few points the game before, but do you think it's a mystery that our power play was extremely successful the last few games when Josh Bailey was not on it and not involved?
If a dope like me has been able to figure it out for years, why hasn't management? We've been saying that. Josh Bailey gets the puck. He won't shoot the puck, They just slough off. Go ahead. I dare you to shoot.
Mm.
Like I said, he's gone to the net the last couple of games. All of a sudden, he's scoring goals. Go figure it out, Josh. You've been in the league, 14 years? And just now you figured it out? I thought you were smart. That's what we keep hearing. You're smart.
Jeremy Ford here saying, "Oh, I know what I wanted to ask you guys. What is with the boot licking weasels? Canadian weasels would rip that boot right open." Sounds like a funny expression, Grump. I'll let you explain what you mean by that.
Boot licking weasels are somebody or some entity who don't have opinions of their own and they want to curry favor with the team because they would love to work for the team. So they figure if they kiss up, brown nose, lick boots, whatever, carry their water for them, that somehow they'll be remembered. Or, hey, maybe we'll give you a job licking boots in the men's room.
I think the phrase goes back to when you surrender in war and you're on your hands and knees groveling, you're kissing the boots of the people who had won that battle, and you're saying, please don't kill us, please don't murder us, asking and begging for forgiveness. So you're kissing, licking the boot.
No, I'm going to go with what I just said. Since I'm the one who invented it, I'm just telling you where it
You did not invent boot licking weasels, Grumpy.
Absolutely, I did. Boot licking weasels. They're weasels because they're disingenuous and they licking boots because they want to be associated with the team. We don't care. We bring truth to the people. We do this for fun.
I can't tell you how many times people say, "Oh my God, this is unlistenable garbage. Unsubscribed on this." I'm just like,
then don't listen.
See ya. Do you think we're like, hey, our livelihood depends on whether John Smith likes what you produce and likes what you say? I don't know. I think that's what makes us genuine, is that we're not beholden to say, okay, we notice some people don't like that we're being negative about the team. How many lumps did we used to take early on before this season when we used to speak negatively about the team? You can't speak negatively about the team. You're so deaf. You're so blind to what happens. I would try to present, right? We used to be able to, before this year, play devil's advocate. That's what I used to be able to do really well. It's like, hey, this is what fans say. Let me go ahead and bring up the arguments they're making, right? There's no argument to be had about how the team's headed in a positive direction for this season because we've struggled so mightily. So that's maybe why it sounds like we're in a bash fest. But we used to play the, hey, let's do good cop, bad cop. Let's go ahead and have one ideology and school thought against another. How can we see it different ways? People didn't like you, Grumpy old man. They used to say, Grumpy doesn't know anything. And now it's a lot of people coming around.
I never looked at it as good cop and bad cop. I looked at it as reality cop, that's me, and fantasy cop, and that's everybody else. Is it really, if you think about it, is there anything that I've ever said that's been totally incorrect, with the exception of Zach Parise this year? Of all the years we've been doing this, the answer is no.
I'd say probably not.
No.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm probably a little bit ahead of the curve because I'd rather be a year early than a year late to move somebody to get some value for him. And you watch, Brock Nelson will eventually be one of those guys who gets moved. Why? Because he's got a no trade clause. I'm not saying now, because it won't be now. They don't have the balls to go out and make a bold move like that. But in a year or two, he'll be moved out.
Chris Smith says Scott Mayfield, 5 years, $20 million, so $4 million per. I could see a team offering more, shockingly enough, because think about it. Mayfield's only going to be 30. Go ahead.
The cap will also be going up as well.
Yep. I could see a team offering more for a guy like that. He's never been paid. Think about what Ryan Suter went for. I'm sorry. Is it pronounced Sutter or Suter?
Suter.
So think about what Ryan Suter went for this offseason. Again, go ahead.
Ryan Suter's a better player than Scott Mayfield. He's a better player than
Scott. A hell of a lot older than Scott Mayfield.
But he's a better player. I mean, here's the thing. He only got, what did he get? Was it a 2-year deal or 4-year deal?
Give me a sec. I'll pull up his contract.
But I mean, I think it was like $4 million per, and it's because he's older. I mean, but
Ryan 4 years, $14.6 million total.
Yeah. So $3.5 million approximately.
Yeah, about 3.6. Okay, he was also 37 years old. I don't know, Grump. And I think offensive production wise, I mean, as a more complete defenseman, I think Suter's better. He's more of a complete defenseman. Again, he can offer a little bit more on the offensive side of the puck than Scott Mayfield does. I mean, but you look at the point, Ryan Suter's 37 years old, Grump.
I know.
56 games played this year, 25 total points.
He's still pretty good for an old man. I mean, Minnesota, they bought out those 2 contracts. Why? Because this year Parise was productive. But you know what they said? Yeah, time to move on from these guys. If you really, really want to get better, got to move some of those old guys out. Period. Buy them out. Move on.
Jeremy Ford says Salo and Bolduc with a goal each tonight. Holmstrom, your favorite Grump, with an assist and a helper as well. Bridgeport up 6-3 against the Providence Bears through 40 minutes, Grump.
Wow.
Look at all that offensive production. Look at that.
Incredible.
John A says way too much to invest, talking about Scott Mayfield, for a third pairing defenseman that's 30 plus years old going forward. Move him now.
Exactly.
Brian B saying here, everybody talking for hours and hours about what we should do at the deadline. Lou is going to do nothing. The only move he's going to make is Clutter, and he's going to sign him back in the offseason.
I have a feeling Brian might be correct on that.
No freaking way. I hope you're wrong, Brian. I hope
he's wrong too, but has that been Lou's MO? No. Particularly you think, hey, we're just one bottom pairing defenseman away from being a Stanley Cup contender next year. Keep dreaming.
And then Jeremy Ford here says, totally agree with your thoughts, Grump, on Pelech playing with Dobson. Can Salo play with Pulak, or do they need to bring in in from the outside of the organization to play, either Salo, Aho, Bolduc, Hutton for third pairing defenseman?
I would play Salo with Pulak. That's why I'd like to see Salo up here now. I'd like to see them experiment with that now in the last 20 games of the season.
So starting out next season, it's not like you're playing what works for the first 10 to 15 games of the year.
I know they like Pelech with Pulak, but your 2 best defensemen are Pelech and Dobson. They should be playing together, getting the lion's share of the ice time, without a doubt. Absolutely. And that's Pelech is fantastic defensively. Dobson is really solid defensively and exceptional offensively. Great pairing. Pulak and Salo together. They both are very similar games, but I'd like to see those 2 play together. And then, like I said, I like Grant Hutton. I realize he's a free agent at the end of the year. You can get him back without a doubt. You give him a legitimate shot to play. Aho, Bolduc, whoever. I'd bring in another veteran as well, though. I would bring in another veteran. Nothing wrong with that, because if Salo doesn't work out in your top 4, you can drop him down to the bottom pairing, get him his minutes, and then play a veteran left-handed defenseman to play up there with Pulak. No problem with that. We're not that far away, even though we have Chara and Green on the team right now. We're not that far away from having a really, really solid defensive core, but you have to set the guys up the right way. Will Barry do it? That's a whole nother can of worms.
Jeremy Ford said, what do you think Dobson signs for in the offseason?
I'll let you tackle that one, TJ.
This is, and trust me, when Phil's Facts is back on here in the future, I cannot wait to have the conversation. I can't. I'm chomping at the freaking bit, right? He believes in the ideology of you can't sign him to a huge long-term deal. He's not going to you're going to buy out way too many years of restricted free agency. He's got 3 years left of restricted free agency, I believe. He'll be 20, or maybe he's got 3. I think he's got 3 years left as a restricted free agent. So what type of ideology are you going to take? Are you going to sign him to a 3-year bridge or 3-year gap deal or 3-year bridge deal to say, hey, we're going to pay you 3 years, $4 million per. And then when you're 25 years old, after you've had multiple years of 50 or 60 plus point production, you're a top pairing defenseman in the NHL, then we're going to have to shell out like $10 million, 11 with cap increasing, maybe $12 million a year for you, because he's put up an inordinate amount of points as of recent. Are you going to want to pay that more and say, after you're 25, now we're going to sign you to an 8-year extension. We're going to sign you through 32, paying you 10, 11, $12 million a year. Or are you going to say, hey, we go ahead and sign you to an 8-year deal now, pay more on the front end, but through the prime of your career, we're going to get you a cheaper dollars towards as you enter the prime. And then we can go ahead and extend out deals like that with Barzal. We've got more cap certainty. And it's not like 3 years down the road, we're saying, how can we make sure that we could fit Noah Dobson in at 10, 11, $12 million a year? That's where I worry.
I wonder if you give him a 3-year extension now at $4 million per, and then when he's 25, you give him the 8-year deal You get him till he's 33 years old.
If I'm sorry, he'll be 33. If you give him an 8-year deal when he's 25, he's going to be getting $10+ million a year. No freaking doubt in my mind. No doubt in my mind. None.
You don't want to. Here's what you don't want. You don't want to give him an 8-year deal now, and then when he's turned 29, he's going to cash in, because then you're going to lose him. You're going to lose him.
He's 22 right now. He'll be 30.
Okay, but I think you run the risk of losing him. Whereas if you give him a 2-year or a 3-year extension at $4 million, he'll jump at that. It's 4 times his salary now. He'll jump at that. But
I'm just saying, you're going to pay a lot on the front end. When he's 25 years old, I'm telling you, just like I let every single listener of this podcast know, Noah Dobson would have 10+ goals. Remember that? People laughed. No, do you think he's going to have 10+ goals? Yes, I do. Knew he's going to have 10+ goals. I'm going to take a strong statement here now. Over the next 3 seasons, barring injury, Noah Dobson will be your leader as defenseman for points. He'll be putting up 50+ points every single year. If he doesn't get hurt. You're looking at a defenseman at bare minimum in a Barry Trotz defensive style system is going to be putting up 50+ points every single year.
Yeah, he's good.
Every year, bare minimum.
He's good.
I mean, shit, he's almost on pace to hit 50 now.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that he stays an Islander for his whole career.
Yes, because he's extremely talented.
However you can manage that financially, I'm fine with it. And I'm a big fan of buying out free agency years, without a doubt.
And I guess here's the thing. It's not the end of the world if you sign him to a bridge deal now, because if you're going to have to pay more on when he gets to the big contract where he could possibly be an unrestricted free agent, right? You're going to be paying him 10, 11, $12 million a year, because the simple fact of the matter is, right, you have no team control over him. He can go out there and get an unbelievable amount in unrestricted free agency. On top of that, he's a guy who puts up points, and the cap's going to be increasing. So you're going to have to pay him macho dollars. That being said, you're going to get him until the age of 33 years old. And once you're turning 33, 34, right, you're kind of hitting the downside of your career in all likelihood. So you can get him through the prime and even towards the tail end as he's starting to maybe take a step back or two. So you're going to get him throughout the majority of his playing years. If you sign him to an 8-year deal now, you're getting him till he's 30. He probably still has a few more years, of really productive years left in him.
A lot of productive years.
So, yeah. Again, I wouldn't be opposed to doing a 3-year contract. I'm just saying, if you want more cap certainty to where you can kind of go ahead and pick and choose what you want to do without having to worry about the massive restructure when Noah Dobson becomes an unrestricted free agent, you could sign it now to save yourself a headache later on. Either way, right? This is a guy you've got to keep on the roster.
As long as you don't try to screw him on a bridge deal. That's the problem you run into. If they try to screw you on a bridge deal, oh, well, you know what? You're making $1 million now. Let's make you $2 million now. You know what? Don't try to screw him on that bridge deal, because I'd remember that if I was the player. You know what?
I promise you his agent will remember that.
You're really not a $4 million a year player. I realize he's not a $4 million a year player right now, but we think he's going to be there. So we want to reward him ahead of time. That buys you favor with him going forward. It's like, okay, they showed faith in me. I'm going to repay them when it comes. I'm still going to be a restricted free agent. I'm willing to go the 8 years, and maybe I'll take a little bit less to help with the salary cap. That's why that's the benefit. You overpay a little bit. Same thing like they do with Makar. Now, Makar was ridiculous numbers, 9.5 per whatever it is. He's shown that he's earned that, though. What's he going to get when he hits the market when he's 30 years old or 29?
Well, here's the thing. Depends on what Makar can do. I'm just going to tell you this. He's a small guy. Cale Makar is not big by any stretch of the imagination. You saw how quick Erik Karlsson fell off the board, right?
He tore the Achilles. It's a difference. You tear an Achilles, that's different. That's what here's
the thing. If Erik Karlsson offered anything on the defensive side of the puck, it doesn't matter if his offense fell off a little bit because he was a complete defenseman. Cale Makar is a freaking liability in the defensive side of the puck, just like Erik Karlsson is. When the offense goes, or if something happens where you've got an injury and you're a one-trick pony, that seriously diminishes your value. That's what I'm saying. I think, and again, you're right. Erik Karlsson fell off the board big time where he tore the Achilles. But Eric Carlson and Cale Makar, when you talk about production-wise, you talk about game style, they're all offensive-minded players. And I'd argue Cale Makar, maybe when his peak comes up, he'll be more of an offensive talent than Eric Carlson was. I could see that. I see that he joins the offensive attack. You think about how often he goes ahead and shoots those gaps and has chances and drives in that. It's more than what Carlson did during his peak. Carlson was much better standing in the back with the slap shot and setting players up. Cale Makar doesn't. Go ahead.
He did a lot of that jumping up in the play too. I think once again you're selling Carlson short. He was like 88 points in a year from defense one year. I mean, the whole thing was he tore the Achilles. That's what did in Carlson more than anything else. He's never been the same player since he tore that Achilles. Never. I mean, a freak injury, an injury like that is devastating to a hockey player. Any athlete, honestly, tearing Achilles, man, that's tough to come back from.
No doubt about it, Grumpy. No doubt about it. Frank K said, my favorite was Dobson is a bust early on. I do remember those. Those were fantastic. Man, I just wish I bookmarked them. Matthew S. says, imagine if Devon Taves was still here.
Then you're set. You're absolutely set. Because then you definitely would have Pulak, Taves, Pelech, Dobson, Salo, and whoever on your bottom pairing. Your defense is set for years like that.
Real quick, Cale Makar, you mentioned that he had that 1 year at Carlson when he had 82 points in over 82-game season.
Okay.
Now, Cale Makar's got 65 points so far in the 55 games he's played. So he's on pace, at 23 years old, on pace to average more than a point a game.
He's good.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Again, I think his strength comes from offensive side of the puck, not fantastic on the defensive.
No, I think he makes $9.5 million a year, I believe, Makar, and he's locked up for I think another 7 years after this one. Yes, it brings him to 30. Well,
so they took that school of thought, the same one that I thought with Dobson.
Yeah, that's still a lot of money for him. I mean, I thought considering he wasn't going to be an unrestricted free agent for a lot more years, I thought maybe they get a little bit better deal for them. I don't think you'd have to give, if you were to give Dobson an 8-year deal now, you wouldn't have to pay him $9.5 million. Not even close.
I said 6, and I get laughed off the stage. Why would you pay him that much?
Yeah, I remember that.
Because, again, the guy's an undeniable talent.
Yeah.
And as you see his production continue to increase the remainder of the season, you say he's at 32 points now, and he might be able to squeak his way to 50-plus points this year. You think, holy shit, a big defenseman, shoring things up on the defensive side of the puck, has been fantastic and has really improved on the offensive side of the puck. He's now the power play quarterback at the age of 22 years old. Guys like that get paid if you want to. Again, I know everybody says, going ahead and offering a whole bunch for a restricted free agent is taboo. If you talk about a guy who's worth, I think, if you have the chance to go ahead and make a team pay, throwing a lot at a restricted free agent, I know the Islanders can match, but Noah Dobson is a guy you could throw a lot at. That's all I'm going to say on that.
I can't wait for your thoughts on that to show up on certain websites soon enough. And they will.
Yep, that they do. It's like certain people listen. John A says, Brian B, my biggest fear is that they will go on a mini win streak and that Lou stands pat. Oof.
That's what I'm petrified of as well.
Pony Boy Curtis says, who would win in a fight, Adam Pelech or Ryan Pulak?
Who cares?
Okay, you should like those weird ones. Jeremy F says, if the Islanders can move Varlamov and Bailey or Lee, plus dropping Cal Clutterbuck's salary, there is going to be some serious cap space going out, and add a big piece like a top 6 defenseman or top 6 forward and a top 4 defenseman. Lee has the full no trade. He's not going anywhere.
Okay. Let's say that was to happen, Jeremy, and I certainly ascribe to that. Not only the cap space, it's the fact that you're freeing up 2 spots in your top 6 where you can get better. To me, that's the key. It's not the cap space. It's not the money. All those guys carry big contracts. But the fact that you would be able to have more talented players in your top 6, therefore making your team better, because what do we struggle at? Scoring goals, the last couple of games notwithstanding. So to me, that's the biggest concern. And until you start moving out top 6 guys off the team to bring younger, more talented players up, we're going to be in that same perpetual cycle, particularly if Barry goes back to playing Lee and Bailey in top 6 roles next year. It's not a mistake that the team started playing started playing better offensively when they both got dropped in the lineup.
Got a comment here from Frank K saying Dobson reminds me of Stephon Pearson.
He's better than Pearson.
He mentioned and later on in the comment he says more just his skating, how he's a big smooth skater. He's very smooth on his skates.
He reminds me of Larry Robinson. I'm not saying he's Larry Robinson, but the style of play. I see it in Dobson. Man, Dobson is so smart. He's not ultra physical. Larry Robinson wasn't a guy who's going to run you through the boards, but man, he knew how to position his body to get the puck in the back end. He was really, really good. He's a Hall of Famer, but I still feel like he was underrated. And he went to Montreal from the Kings. What a steal. I remember, I think that was the Rogie Vachon trade where Larry Robinson and draft picks and every other thing came over from the Kings for Rogie Vachon, who was the backup goalie in Montreal at the time.
I'm grumpy. And you got a next comment here saying Christmas saying hopefully Robin Salo comes in and plays well.
He'll be better. I don't think see a lot of people. Oh man, Robin Salo's great. No, I don't think he was that great. Not this time. But I wanted him to stay in the lineup. Why? He's only going to get better the more he plays in every situation. That's what you're looking for, particularly in a lost season. Don't leave him down in the minors. Let him play up with the big team. Let him play 15, 18 minutes a game. Nothing wrong with that. Get some of those, the things he needs to iron out done now in a losing season so you don't have to depend on him next year. Let's say our team is a little bit better. He'll be a better player going into the season. Just a thought.
Then Jeremy Ford saying here, the organization's done an amazing job with surrounding him, talking about Noah Dobson with great mentors. You talk about Johnny Boychuk, Andy Green, Zdeno Chara to help Dobson's development as compared with, let's say, Evan Bouchard in Edmonton. Can Pelech do that for Samuel Bolduc?
No. There's no way I want Pelech and Bolduc on the same pairing. No. Pelech's a first pair guy with Noah Dobson. He's that good defensively. He really is. Dobson and he should be the first pairing, period. Best players, put them together.
Noah W says, what do you think about Dobson? $3.5 million per for the next 3 years?
I said 4 per. I'm generous though. What can I tell you?
I'd be fine with 4 per.
Yeah.
Jeremy F saying here, I'd say that Dobson more than $3.5 million, maybe 4.5 for the next 2-3 years, and then Bailey's off the books, if not sooner.
Okay.
And then Pulock and Dobson should be eating up 45 to 46 minutes a night on the right side. So if you only need a guy to play 14 to 15-minute guy, I think Grant Hutton could be that in a pinch. But I agree that Green could fill, like a guy like Green could fill in.
Isn't Hutton the left-handed defenseman?
Well, he's right defense.
Right. Okay, so he's right defenseman. Okay. Yeah, no problem at all. And you can re-sign him on the cheap. But you know what? No problem signing a low-cost vet for that bottom pairing either. Let them both compete in training camp. Best guy wins. I don't care. Well, maybe not with Barry because the vet would win. But what you should do is have competition for that bottom pairing spot. Your top 4, your top 3 anyway are cemented, right? I still think I would get a veteran for that second pairing. Let Salo play the bottom pairing minutes next year. With eventually Salo with Pulock. That's what I want to see.
Absolutely. And then get a comment here from Matthew S. saying, everybody overpays at deadline. Come on, Grump.
Yeah, but not as much as some teams overpay, like us.
And Jeremy F. said, the slip of the tongue is funny, TJ. Colburn is a 7th pairing defenseman. As must maybe what I said. You meant 7th defenseman, but come on, maybe his ability is that of a 7th pairing defenseman. Absolutely. And then Aiden T says here they should keep Parise, league minimum contract.
Yeah,
well, here's the thing: if you want to trade him away and he wants to come back, fantastic. I'd take him again next year on a league minimum contract.
Yeah, but for me, he's 1-year contracts every year, and I'm giving him vet minimum every year. If you hit 15 goals, you get an extra 500, whatever. Everything performance-based bonuses. That's fine. You can't become too dependent on guys in their late 30s. You just can't. But for vet minimum, playing a bottom 6 role, I think he's great.
Paulo C says here, guys, so you would trade Mayfield for just a first rounder? Because I don't think you're going to get much more. I mean, the quality of the player besides the first round won't make a difference.
Unless they need to move some cap, unless they need to move some money. And that's, to make that deal work. Like Toronto's up against the cap. You hear Toronto's interested in him. Maybe you get McDermott back. Maybe you get him back to play. He's a left shot defenseman. It makes them better. Gets a little bit of salary off of their books, puts it onto ours. I mean, I don't think he's making a boatload of money, but still, that helps us out. I have no problem with that at all. And get yourself a first rounder in the mix, ready to go.
John A says, Bavillier is obviously extremely inconsistent. If they were to give up on him, it would have to be for another team's equivalent of Bavillier. They can't afford to just get picks for him. I
agree with that. That I agree with.
Take a flyer on a guy who needs to change the scenery. Maybe Bavillier needs to change the scenery.
Right. And that's why I mentioned Besser.
Jeremy Ford saying here, Landeskog's salary $7 million and Fleury's $7 million. Nothing funny going on here. My guess is Landeskog will be back on May the 3rd. I think you may be right, Jeremy.
Well,
I think maybe that meniscus surgery is going to happen to be fully healed as soon as the NHL playoffs start. Wouldn't that just be mighty convenient, Grump?
Okay, here's the thing. It was negotiated for the collective bargaining agreement. Until that comes up, whenever it comes up, the rule's not changing. Get over it.
I'm just saying it should be changed in the next collective bargaining agreement, Grumpy.
And Jeremy, that's not for you. That's for TJ.
Jeremy Ford here saying the Capitals have exactly zero cap space. The Islanders could be a good middleman team to pick up some more draft picks.
Why not? Why not?
And then Matthew S. said, correction, TJ, the 16-team no trade list means, or no trade clause means that he's okay to be traded to anyone on that list. Okay, so he makes the list of the 16 teams that he allows to be traded to. And then every team not on the list, you can't be moved to. Long story short, he can be traded to half the teams in the NHL, half the teams he doesn't want to be traded to.
He has to give the list in before. They can't just say, okay, how about we send you to this team? No, I don't want to go to that team. You have to provide them with a list. These are the teams I don't want to be dealt to. They're on my claw, and then anyone else is up for grabs.
Jeremy Ford here saying, if you can bring in Philip Forsberg and Lindholm, would that be enough to make us a contender?
That's not happening. It's not happening.
Hmm.
If we bring in McDavid and Draisaitl, I think we have a shot to be a cup contender.
Oh,
I mean, we have to do a lot of but remember, Jeremy, we have to do subtraction as well. You just can't bring in Forsberg and Lindholm. Like I said, that's not happening. But let's say we were able to do that. You still have to get rid of two guys who are top 6 players right now for you. They have to be moved off, demoted, whatever. Then what's going to happen with your young guys? Are they going to go back down to the minors? You have to move some of those guys out to bring in new talent.
John A. says, is Toronto the only other possible destination for Varlamov? There doesn't seem to be a market for goalies amongst contenders. A dark horse, in my opinion, is Minnesota. Cam Talbot and Kako, I believe is how you pronounce his name, have been playing like dog shit for the past month. I know Jack Campbell has fallen off the board. And here's the thing. Toronto, was that?
He's also been injured too.
I know before he got injured, he was playing kind of a little poorly. But that's a guy, I've always been a big Jack Campbell fan, but that's a guy who's not, I mean, like you're talking about, is that we always go through when we do the TJ and the Grumpy Old Man podcast, is that a quarterback that can help you win a Stanley, or is that a quarterback that can help you win a Super Bowl? I do the same with Jack Campbell. Is that a goalie that can help you win the Stanley Cup? And the answer is no.
Like I said, we don't know the teams that Varlamov said he would be willing to be traded to. So this could all be a moot point. Yeah. But I mean, Vegas, Robert Leonard's injured again. They need help in goal too. That could be somewhere he could go. I mean, they're not going to bring Fleury back. If you're Fleury, would you go back there? They just dumped you last offseason to save money.
And here's the thing with Robin Leonard. Well, no, Fleury's definitely not going back, I don't believe. That being said, he went home regarding the lower body injury. So they sent him home. They sent the starting goalie home there to further evaluate the lower body injury. So who the heck knows? I have no idea what's going on with them. And here's the thing too. I wonder if there's going to be some sort of surgery, revolving, Robin Leonard. He was out with the lower body injury earlier on. didn't seem to have shaken it, and now he seems that it's still giving him a bother. So I wonder if that's more of a deep-seated issue where he's got a tear and he might need surgery or an extended time off.
What should Lou be doing right now?
Hey, Vegas, I've got a goaltending option for you that allows you to have a great 1A, 1B tandem. You've seen that it could work here. I mean, that both these guys have played for the Islander system. Look at the production for Varlamov. You know, you already know what you have in Robin Lehner. This will give you a fantastic 1A, 1B system. You're going to go just back to where you had fantastic goaltending in Marc-Andre Fleury and Robin Lehner. And, you know, Varlamov's a short-term option. You have him for one more year.
Okay, no. You think really GMs talk like that to one another? Again, it's not the fluff.
Okay. I'm just telling Grumpy. Come on.
No, stop fluffing. Here's what bring. Hey, how long's Leonard out? How much you're going to give me for Varlamov? That's it. He's available. Let me know. Just let him know he's available. Toronto, Varlamov's available. What are you going to give me for him? Yes, we have a couple of teams interested. We want to get this done like in the next 3 or 4 or 5 days. You want to get this done.
I thought you were about to say the next 3 or 4 or 5 hours.
No, you want to get this trade done before the deadline. You want to be the first guy to trade the goalie. I would.
And then
Washington. What do you need, Washington? What can you do? What can you give us?
We'll send Varley back. Pony Boy Curtis says here, Devon Taves is literally a point a game player and like third in the league in plus minus, or he's first in the league in plus or minus. And Nick Leddy has the second worst plus minus in the league. Second round pick, 2 second round picks, or 2 second round picks. What a joke.
Terrible trade.
Well, no, it had something to do with the market at that time period, and you just don't understand. I hated when people used to say that. I'm like, no, I very well understand what value of players should receive and what you should get for them. And we were wildly underpaid for that.
We had an emergency podcast when that trade was made and just blasted it.
Yes.
Here's the reason it happened. Barry Trotz loved Nick Leddy, period. It was Leddy or Taves. They decided to take the older guy with no upside as opposed to a younger player who hadn't even played 150 games in the league and had oodles of exactly what we need, and he moved him for 2 seconds. I don't care if you would have got 1 second for Nick Leddy. That's the guy you had to move. Well, we didn't know if we couldn't sign him. He was a restricted free agent. You can make the money work. Then Johnny Boychuk says he goes on long-term injury not a month later. So you didn't know about Boychuk's situation? $4.1 million for 4 years? You couldn't have made that work when Boychuk made $6 million per? That's a absolute colossal blunder and colossal failure by Lou Lamoriello. That's being nice. That's being nice.
I'm going to go through 2 comments, Grupp, and I'm going to walk away here for a moment. Brian B says, stop it. Bellows will never see the first line. And then Jeremy F. here. I'll let you read this, Grump, and I'll be right back.
Okay. I think Bellows will see the first line. It might be from the bench, but I think that he will see the first line because he does watch the games. Just kidding, Brian. And then we have from Jeremy, I think Wahlstrom's weakness, positionally decision-making on the defensive side of the puck, plus Barzell's weakness in his own zone, makes that a pairing that just won't happen in Trotz's eyes at this point. That's very possible, but I think Barzell is better defensively than he has been. Of course, he's had to sacrifice his offensive game. But, you know, if you have a solid winger on the other side who is really good defensively, you could make that work. Why do I like Wahlstrom potentially with Barzell? Because Barzell is able to handle the puck, and Wahlstrom moves to spots where he could shoot. He's not like Anders Lee, who just stands in front of the net. You keep forgetting Anders Lee is terrible defensively, and all he does is stand in front of the net. I think Wahlstrom with his shot, just like if they would have brought Tarasenko in last offseason, a guy with a lethal shot. Man, I'm just having trouble speaking today. A guy with a lethal shot like that is perfect for Matt Barzell because Barzell draws people to him. Look at last night's game. He skates in the zone, draws 3 defenders to him, and makes a pass right out in front of the net to an open skater. That would be devastating if Wahlstrom was one of those guys. Like I said, I don't know if Barry's going to do it. Barry's got his own agenda, but I think you're going to see Wahlstrom has to be elevated next year. You can't have him 3 straight years on the third line when he's probably got the best shot on the whole team. I'm going to say Bellows probably has the second best shot. But that being said, that's just kind of the way I look at that. Like I said, for me, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, this is a long time, honestly, for TJ to be taking a bathroom break. So I don't know what he had to do in there, but he's got to get back quick. You know, I love it when he gives me these type of comments where, you know, you can't talk about it for 5 minutes. So I don't know. But I'm going to read a couple of ones that I actually see pop up over here, and we're going to see how this comes out. DB Hooper, defensive back Hooper, says he's unsubscribing.
Struggling over here, gee.
Well, no, dude. I mean, you've gone a long time. I guess maybe you did wash your hands this time. You've gone quite a while.
Grumpy, my God, I was gone for like a minute and a half.
No, it was longer than that.
Oh my goodness. I heard your points about Wahlstrom. He'll be played. My gosh, you were having a trouble speaking. You were having trouble speaking, weren't you, Grump?
Yeah, I was.
Because you're not drinking enough of your grape drink. Is that what it is?
I didn't have enough grape drink. That's true.
Matthew S says here, exactly. You can't run the same team back and expect, and you cannot run the same team exactly back. Absolutely. And Jeremy Ford saying here, William DeFore, 1 goal, 3 assists tonight, 42 games played, 40 assists, and 40 goals, or 42 goals and 40 assists through 45 games. Pretty impressive from the kid. I hope he and Ratu will be paired up together. Seems like a good fit with complementary skill sets.
I don't think he's a great skater. I mean,
the
he
thing
has.
I worry about too is that he's a forward who is 20 years old playing against kids who are 16, 17, 18 years old. I mean, he's 4 years older than some of these kids. Some of these kids haven't even hit puberty yet. So, you know, the fact that he's 20 and putting up these points, it's, you know, encouraging, but it's in the queue, and I'll wait to see what he does in the A.
Okay.
I hope we found a steal. I hope we find a guy who could be, you know, even a bottom 6 forward in the 5th round. That'd be fantastic.
I don't think he's a great skater. That's a problem. We need guys who can skate. It's a skating game.
Knowing Trotz too, this is a guy in best case scenario who's like 2 or 3 years away.
Okay. Yeah.
Wouldn't you think?
Barry might be gone by then.
That's true. That's true. Ponyboy Curtis said, did you guys see Ovechkin's hook the other night in Edmonton, the Edmonton game? They tried it, you know, they tied it up with less than a minute left, and it looked like he was riding on a water ski, no call. We talked about that on the TJ and the Grumpy Old Man show.
Edmonton should have been used to that. They saw Gretzky do that for years. Years. That's how he defended. Ride a guy.
Oh, man, I tell you.
He couldn't have played. He would have, well, I don't know, because Ovechkin got away with it. Maybe Gretzky would have too, but he couldn't have covered anyone in today's NHL.
Ponyboy Curtis also says, where in the hell is Michael Del Cole in the A? What a waste of a 5th overall pick. Despicable. I hate that guy. I don't hate him as a person, but he's not great. Yeah,
he's another guy who can't skate. I mean, he scored goals in the OHL, but he couldn't skate. You got to be able to skate.
He was in the A, or was he in the Q? Oh, no, he's in the OHL. That's right. Yeah, think about it. He had 90-plus points back-to-back years for the Oshawa Generals. Yeah, that's right. 90-plus.
He's a goal scorer, but he can't skate. You got to be able to skate.
God almighty, Michael Del Cole. Dan L said here, really frustrated with Beauvillier. I would be inclined to trade him, but he's one of the only younger players we have. With that being said, I think he should, you know, be on Barzal's left wing. They were good friends, and, you know, they were electric in the 2017-18 season. Let's see them roll together for 20 to 30 games, and let's see what we've got. Lee should definitely not be on the first line.
Agreed with all that.
Yep, absolutely, Dan. 100% agree with that, too. Nick D also says 24 wins out of 27 games. No problem. Yeah, right. Watch the Islanders go win 22 games out of 27 games just to screw themselves.
Yes, I can see. Now, our schedule's really tough down the stretch.
Nick D also says maybe they told Barry to take a step back and maybe let Lambert do a little more coaching. No, I doubt that.
Maybe Lambert is doing more of the coaching.
And one can only wish. F. Barry Trotz, he's got to go. Paulo C says here, Grumpy, the 3 best offensive forwards should be playing on the first line, period. especially when we stand on this, especially where we stand on this team. It should be young and most talented players on the first line.
As long as they fit chemistry wise. Because if you have a guy who's maybe not the best player, but he has tremendous chemistry with the other two and it balances the line out, that's the way it should be. If you got three guys who are just fantastic, I'll draw a soccer reference. Paris Saint-Germain with Mbappe, Neymar, and Messi, it's just a bad mix. And that's why they lose. But you have to have some type of cohesiveness among the three guys. And you can't just have three guys who are supremely talented. Let's say all three need the puck. Well, you can't have all three of them on the same line. It's
you can't have three finishers, but nobody to create. You can't have just all creators and no finishers. That's kind of what you mean. I know what you mean. Yeah. Matthew S. says here, the Rangers have overachieved slightly. Mostly everything has gone right for them.
The goalie's been phenomenal. And they're young guys, young veterans. I'm going to say, I'm not saying like Kakko and Lafreniere. They've really stepped up. They've had some good deals, good free agent signings, and they've all panned out for them. Adam Fox is actually playing better than they ever thought he was going to play. Let's be honest.
Yes.
I don't even think they thought Adam Fox was that good.
He's been fantastic for them.
I mean, but they're weak defensively. They're not good defensively.
Yeah, absolutely. And you don't see me disagree with that. And then, Jeremy, for giving us an update, Austin Zarnak, 2 goals, 1 assist tonight. Simon Holmstrom, 2 primary assists, Grumpy.
You know what? Hopefully he's standing out. Hopefully he's going to the net more. My concern is he's Josh Bailey 2.0. That's my concern, where he just hangs out on the perimeter.
He makes crisper, harder passes than Josh Bailey could even dream of, and he's got a rifle for a shot. Or compared to Bailey, he's got if Bailey shoots a pop gun, this guy looks like he's shooting a rifle.
Well, I mean, that helps solve some of our youth problem if he can actually perform. If he's a bottom 6 guy, no, doesn't help us. We need top 6 players.
And then we got a comment here from Charles D saying, Grumpy, Mayfield for Kakko. Would you do it?
No. I want draft picks as opposed to, I mean, what's
Kakko hasn't performed. I mean, Kakko this year, 37 games played, 5 goals, 9 assists, 14 total points. First year in the NHL, 23 total points in 66 games. Second year in the NHL, 17 points, 48 games. This year, 14 points, 37 games.
He doesn't fit how we play, or he'd be a type of guy that I trade Beauvillier for. But right now he hasn't done enough for me to say, yeah, he's going to be a surefire star.
He hasn't shown me enough to where it even sparked my interest. The only interest that would even, gravitate and that puts people into pool or the school of thought of, hey, maybe we could take a gamble on him is just solely based off of his draft position 3 years ago. And if he wasn't a first-round pick as high as he was, let's say he was 27th or 28th pick, people would be like, no, thank you, no interest. But just because he was a top 5 pick, 2nd overall, people say, oh, maybe he still got it. Right, Grump.
He also could be because he plays in one of the lower lines and he's a top 6 type player.
Absolutely. Max P says, what's up, fellas? When you have an owner who thinks it's not necessary to spend any money on a scouting staff, you tend to draft poorly. And when your plan is to rebuild through the draft, holy shit.
True. I mean, you should always have a good scouting staff. For me,
talking about the old Charles Wang days.
Yeah, Charles Wang. But I mean, I think we have the same guys. I don't think any of them have changed. The same guys.
Maybe we pay them more now because they're more veteran. They have more experience.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh. Shooters Puck Hockey says, my men's league team, Shooters, play after the Islanders game on the 24th at UBS Arena. Shooters Puck Hockey, I need you to give us a scouting report. The reason I show this, number one, nice. That's fantastic. That's cool. And I want you to give us a scouting report on what you think the ice surface is like. Is the ice going to be shitty, or do you think the ice surface is pristine?
And a bunch of guys tumbling. Now it's a men's league, so maybe they all go tumbling anyway. But we want to know if there was extra tumbling going on.
I was about to say, is it worse than your local ice rink? Or you think to yourself, I'm like, holy crap, the ice surface is shit. Just let us know what you think of the ice surface. And then Paulo C says here, we can make a big trade. Mayfield and Varlamov to Colorado. I mean, I tell you, Colorado is going to have to do a lot in return. They don't have a first or second in this year's draft class.
Yeah, we want to get picks. I mean, I'm not saying that only picks, but you want to be getting for trading those two guys. You got to get at least a first and a second and a player.
Ariel C said, "We're going to go on a 10-game winning streak and make the playoffs." Just kidding. I wanted to see Grumpy lose it for a second.
I honestly, I looked at, I'm like, gosh, was that really Ariel saying that? What happened?
She's had a change of heart, Grumpy, after the last two games. She's ready to go. Jeremy F also saying here, it's not just like they can come back. They come back in the playoffs. It's that they come back game 1 of the playoffs and couldn't have played game 82 of the regular season where the cap penalty would have been applied. Yep. That's where the issue is. And Chris Smith also saying, I agree with TJ. Tampa was $20 million over the cap, and that's ridiculous. They have to change that rule, grumpy old man. Dan L saying, TJ, I agree with your cap comment. I believe the offseason you can go 10% over the cap. That would be a good rule for the playoffs. Yeah, you can go up to 10% over the cap. But here's the thing, too. Even if you can go 10% over the cap in the NHL playoffs, you can lose a guy just like they're doing here with Gabriel Landeskog. He only takes $7 million off the books, and you can add yourself one really stud player that's on an expiring deal, and you could still be under the 10% rule. I don't know. I'm more of a favor of everything is the hard cap all the season long, and then we go to the playoffs, and it doesn't matter at all. At least a soft cap will be a step in the right direction in the playoffs to where you got the 10% cushion you can go over. But I'm a believer of keep the hard cap the entire way.
Yeah, I don't know. I like a little flexibility in the cap.
Landeskog can't come back and play in the playoffs, that's fine. Then you should have the ability to use his cap space. If Landeskog can come back game 1 of the playoffs, there should be a big implication and penalty for that. I'm sorry. I just think there is. I know it's not written that way. That's the way it should be changed. SP says, Grump, people take the fact that you're realistic as being negative. There's a big difference in it.
Yeah, well, a lot of people just like to look at the road through the rose-colored glasses. I'm not one of those guys.
And SB also says, honestly, I think that Forsberg is going to be available in the FA period. We should throw the bank at him. We need a guy like him.
I just don't see him coming here. When have we ever signed a big name free agent? The answer is never. 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 We just lose guys.
I will say this one.
Andrew Ladd was our biggest name free agent ever signed. Andrew freaking Ladd.
Hell yeah. Andrew freaking Ladd is right. I will tell you this. Regarding Philip Forsberg, I think he's a very talented player. It does raise eyebrows for me, though, for a guy who's in a contract year is having a career season in point production.
Yep.
That does cause concern. And I will say Nashville has been very bad in the past. But it does give me a little bit of a question to say, when have I seen this before? A guy who's on a point a game pace over here in a contract year where he's never come close to that before in the past.
A lot of players are like that. They want to cash in, so they put maximum effort till they get that contract.
Yep. And then as soon as they get it, they kind of let things slip off a bit.
It's the same thing that we've had with this team this year, where we play flat like dogs, and all of a sudden, 55 games in, we start playing really hard. Really? Okay. Why?
That's a good question, Grumpy. It's a good freaking question. I'll tell you that much. Why is the right reason? Drew L says, what I've learned from this season is that certain fans know what they're talking about, but yet whether it's politics or bad contracts to maximize a player's value, the coach just plays the vets.
True.
Mm-hmm. Oh. Absolutely true. And then SP said, who is the best general manager between Yzerman and Sackett? If either call you, you get ripped off. I think the edge has to go to Yzerman.
I think Yzerman's a better GM too, and I don't think we were ripped off for Nick Leddy.
I think Yzerman lost that deal. But here's the thing. Well, actually, you know what? I take that back. Yzerman did not lose that deal. They gave up a second round pick. They have so many draft picks. it doesn't really matter that they gave up some draft capital. They have amassed so many picks in the top 3 rounds over the last 4 or 5 years that those players are starting to come and be ready. They don't need additional picks. They still have their first round pick. They could afford to give up their second round pick. And what Letty brought, look at Detroit's defense. Hornick is young. Look at how many young guys they have on there. Nick Leddy is a guy who is skilled by nature, who's a quick skater, and a guy who's a veteran, who has won a cup before, who adds a little bit of the veteran leadership, a component to the Detroit Red Wings as they're getting ready to start taking next steps. I looked at him, he's a stopgap guy that's going to help provide a little bit of that veteran leadership that young defensive core would need.
Well, he's not teaching him how to play defense. I don't know. I never thought Nick Leddy was that great. I always thought he was overrated. I didn't think he was any good since 2014-15. Honestly, it's been a steady decline. I had no problem when they moved him. None.
Think about this. Mark Stahl. I mean, he's the vet, but other than that, it's Mark Stahl and Nick Leddy. Those are the only 2 vets they have.
Think about this. It was so imperative that we keep him, that we let Devon Taves go, then not 11 months later, we move him as well for salary cap reasons. Okay. That was really, man, that's using that long-term vision there, Lou and Barry. Sorry.
And Drew L says, in other words, bootlicking.
And what other thing on Detroit? They're loaded with first, second, and third round draft picks. How'd they get all those picks?
Trading away assets and taking on bad contracts at the trade deadline.
And getting rid of your veterans, right?
Mm-hmm.
Taking whatever you can. How long it take them to turn out from being the worst team in the league to being now a borderline playoff contender?
2018, they were bad. That's when I kind of first for them.
They were the worst team in the league last year.
They were bad for quite some time, though.
But once you implement that plan, how long did it take? 2 years? 2 years?
What do you mean? They've been implementing this plan for years.
They haven't had multiple first, second, and third round picks for years and years.
You're wrong there. I'll pull it up, Grumpy. I'll let you know what it is. But again, because I follow them, just because I'm tied very closely to them, so I kind of pay attention to that. But the Drew L says, in other words, being a bootlicking weasel is basically being a simp in the dating game. You know what a simp is, Grumpy?
Is that a cuck?
What is simp? I assume simp is an abbreviation, isn't it? I don't know.
I'm sure it is. I don't know.
But simp is just meaning like you put everything.
Let me just say this. It doesn't sound like it's a flattering term.
Yes, simp is not a flattering term. And Drew L says, oh, and by the way, TJ and Grump, the very good Islanders site are always ripping your words and advice like off 2 days after you guys say stuff. So I can see why Grumpy is mad. Well, we're not going to touch on that one. All we're going to say.
Oh, I will. Absolutely. I'm going to.
We will say on that, Grumpy, because I'm not going to let you do something.
No. I'm going to answer it. If you want to use my stuff, at least be man enough to say that you are. They've had that problem with Phil too. Phil's Facts, they've done the same thing. Same exact thing they have. Don't do it.
Here's the thing. If you want to, and even if you're pointing up a contrarian point of view, it would be nice just to receive, hey, this is where we heard this from. We know for a fact they listen to the podcast. We've had conversations with individuals there, and that's all I'm going to say. But yes, would it shock me at all if they were using some of the things we said as content? Yeah, we use what they say as content, and we said, oh, it's fun. They didn't like the way we're conducting ourselves. That's fine. But if you're going to use what we say and the ideology we use, we would like to at least say, this is where we received it from. That would, I think, be right and just. But moving along without getting too specific. DB Hooper said, I'm unsubscribing. DB Hooper will not be watching your next podcast. DB Hooper. I like it.
Back Hooper.
Defensive back Hooper. I was about to say, defensive back Hooper is one of the real ones. SP says here, I really want one of the premier wingers in this draft, but I won't be able to stand it if the Islanders do whatever we get is like a Rags are doing there with Kakko and Lafreniere.
The difference is their top six is pretty good. They're really good scoring goals. Here's
the thing, though. Look at what we've done with Oliver Wahlstrom. If you're wondering under this current regime what we would do with the top 10 pick, that's a winger. Look at what we've done with Oliver Wahlstrom. Babied him over his way to the NHL. And when he's in the NHL, play him on the third line for 2 years. And then by the time he's 22, 23 years old, then we'll give him a chance at the top six. Look what we've done with Oliver Wahlstrom. That's what they're going to do with their defensemen. Think about how ultra and uber talented Noah Dobson was, and think about how many years we babied him into the lineup.
2.5 years, right?
2.5 years. And here's the thing. He would have been performing at this level at the beginning of this year if you had thrown him into the fire last year. Throw him into the kiln. Simple as that. We did.
I can
Again,
maybe
he's playing great now, and that's all that matters, but you could get to that point quicker.
I could maybe see when we were going in deep playoff runs. This year, I mean, particularly with the younger guys, there's no excuse now.
Yeah, I don't disagree, Grumpy. I'm pulling everything up here. And then SP said here, and the fact that our development system is probably just as bad doesn't reassure me.
Yeah, that is a concern. But again, it's, top down. Why is Thompson still the coach after all those years down in Bridgeport? Why is Fredo still the GM down there? I mean, I just think we need to change the way we think a little bit. I don't know about you.
Yeah, no, I do too. I'm pulling up. I've just about got everything here. So regarding what Detroit did, and just again, because I think you've got some of like, hey, I've seen that they've done so recently, and that's all that needs to be done. But what Detroit did, and I've got it written down here on a sheet. In 2017, they had 1 first, a second, and 4 third-round picks. 2018, they had 2 firsts, 2 seconds, and 3 third-round picks. 2019 they had a first, 3 seconds, and a third-round pick. 2020 they had a first, 3 seconds, and 2 third-round picks. And in 2021 they had 2 first, a second, and a third-round pick.
You know what it tells me?
A lot of draft capital over the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. It's been like a 5-year rebuild.
You know what it tells me? They know how to draft. That's what it tells me. They know how to draft. Because they don't have
only 1 first-round pick in every single one of those years draft, except once they had 2 first-round picks, and they traded up, I believe, to jump in and get Joe Veleno at the 30th overall pick because he had slipped and fell so low.
They know how to assess talent, and they have a good developmental system. That team bottomed out after their champion. Right? How many years in a row did they make the playoffs? Years
they had
and years.
No
and
first round picks for years and years and years and years, or just like, hey, going and putting good money after bad. But I think the first time they missed it when they got Dylan Larkin 15th overall in 2014.
And I think they made like the playoffs 32 years in a row, something like that. But you know what? That's the way you have to do it. If you can develop talent, that's the way to do it. And they're in great shape now. Great shape.
I'm telling you, the Niederbacks, the Willie Anders, who aren't even up there yet, the Albert Johanssons, those guys are going to be legit. The Simon Edvindsons, those guys are going to be legitimate. Simple as that.
Yep.
Again, Detroit's a team to watch out for in years in the future. Dan L said, Grumpy, I like what you're saying. Maybe Letty on a 2-year, $2 million per deal.
No way. First of all, I don't want a repeat of Nicoletti, and he's going to get paid more than that. He's only, 31? He'll get paid more than that.
SB says Dobson's success also gives me some optimism about William Dufour. Being great in the queue could translate into the NHL, although I'm hoping Dufour could be at least a third-line player.
If he's a third-line player, I don't know. He looks like he's a guy who scores. You don't want that being a third line. Can he skate? I don't know how good a skater he is. That's my concern. I think it's a concern for everyone how well he skates.
Dan L says here, TJ are spot on with the Dobson love. Thank you, Dan. I appreciate it. And SP said, I'm going to the game tomorrow. You can expect to win because I'm bringing my lucky hat. Never lost a game while I had it on me. Well, there we go. Wow. The Honors are guaranteed to win tomorrow. We heard it here first from SP. Brandon Gaines saying, if the Islanders manage to add Fiala and Goudreau without any damaging subtractions to the current roster, do you consider the team a cup contender?
I just don't see us acquiring those type of guys.
I don't know what the sale is or how we'll sell Johnny Gaudreau to come here. Hey Johnny, if you come here now, you're gonna have to play a full 200-foot game, and we're gonna go ahead and criticize you on a consistent basis, and coach will put you in the doghouse if you don't do it.
He wouldn't be criticized
because he's the vet. Is that what it is?
Mm-hmm.
DB Hooper says Bailey reminds me of Gretzky if he had a disease, AIDS. Is that too much? A little bit too far.
A little over the top. A little bit.
A little far. Drew L says here, I swear, I feel like this team is always seems to get a gem between the 11 to 20 spot in the draft. Dobson, Barzal, etc.
Dobson was supposed to be like top 7. And I was worried. I'm like, man, I remember that draft season when we started winning games at the end. I'm like, we were like 6 or 7 the whole year. And then at the end, I think we won like 4 of our last 5 and dropped down to picking 11th. And I didn't think he was going to last. And then we picked Wahlstrom first. I'm like, Wahlstrom? I want Dobson. And then we did pick Dobson. And Barzal was another one. He was hurt his last year. He was ranked way higher than that, but he was injured his whole last year in juniors. And that's what caused him to drop.
Well, the thing I think about too is I remember in that year's draft going into it, I said, man, because this is when we had just come off of Doug Waite. I said, our team sucks defensively. If we can get Dobson and Evan Bouchard, we're in good business. I remember I wanted both of them. And Bouchard went right before us. I'm like, at least we're going to get Dobson. I remember we drafted Wahlstrom first. I was like, holy shit. We were at Grumpy Old Man and I were at an Islanders meetup together. And we're like, holy shit. Are we not going to pick Dobson? And as soon as we picked Dobson, we're like, okay, we got our 2 picks in. Time to go home. I went home after that. Drew says, Anders Lee reminds me of a poor man's Dave Vanderchuk. Look at that. Drew says it. He said, just kidding. Just trying to take Grumpy off.
I believe me, I know, because no one says that except for TJ.
Taco Fall said, I want to dump Varlamov and Bailey. Can we please start Skarek? I think he's a little bit away.
I don't think Skarek's the answer either.
I mean, the answer is Sorokin for us long term.
You want to bring in, if you're going to have a backup, you want him to be a veteran. You don't want to have some rookie be your backup.
Well, here's the thing. You could slowly work him in, but if the rookie's 24, 25 years old, it takes him a while to get to the NHL. That's fine too.
Yeah, I don't think Skarek is that good. Let me just put it to that. I'd rather have a veteran backup. Sorokin's only played a year and 2 years now in the league. In effect, 1 full year.
27 this next year.
Yeah, I don't care. He's only been in the league for like a year and a half.
I'm not saying we shouldn't bring in a vet. I'm just saying Skarek, I think, is still a few years away. SP says here, did you guys see the new Obi-Wan trailer? Looks really good, and the music is crazy.
I have not seen the new trailer.
It's funny. Somebody was telling me about that at the gym, and they're like, you need to check out the trailer. I didn't check it out. I'm going to have to check that out.
It's funny. Most of their trailers look pretty good, and the shows turn out to be not so good.
Oh, Taco Fall says, when you think about it, Devon Taves for 2 AHL guys, and then those 2 AHL guys and some picks for Palmieri and Zajac. Pathetic.
Pretty sad.
Well, no. Devon Taves, the 1 second-round pick, wound up being Atu Ratu. So
it's still a bad trade. That could have been the Nick Leddy. It could have been a Nick Leddy pick. Same thing.
Yep. Fair enough. And again, you could. Here's the thing: you could have got.
We traded the other one to get rid of Andrew Ladd.
Yep, one to get rid of Andrew Ladd, and the other one I think will wound up being Ratu.
No, that's this year's pick. We traded last year's pick to get rid of Andrew Ladd. This year we have Colorado's 2nd round pick. Because
we traded away our pick last year because technically it was earlier, I think, in the draft, and we drafted in Colorado's slot in the 2nd round.
Okay.
But again, I don't know. Everything's getting muddled. John A says here, DeFore is not fleet of foot. I'll temper my expectations. Remember, Michael Del Cole lit it up in juniors and sucked at skating. Yep.
Yeah, you got to be able to skate.
Stephen V came in. He says TJ's bathroom break clocks in at 2 minutes and 22 seconds. After I took my headset off or after I left the place, because I made sure I had to get everything set up before I left. So maybe it's a 2-minute bathroom break, Grumpy.
It was a long time.
I said 1.5 minutes. 2 minutes. I don't know, Grumpy.
You said 1.5 minutes. 2:20. It's like twice as long as you thought.
Shit. Max P says, I agree. The Taves giveaway. Can't even exaggerate how bad that was. Rivals the Tavares debacle, which, by the way, Grumpy, I agree with you on. It's 100% on Snow. He allowed that to happen.
Thank you, Max. You're 100% right. Max is smart. His cat getting liquored up over there, doing shotgun, and the cat's shotgunning some beer.
It was a legendary cat.
Legendary cat.
And then Apollo C says here, I'd be very patient with Bavillier at 24 years old. He's not even in his prime yet. I'm telling you, the day Trotz is gone, Bavillier will shine, playing with young players like Barzal and company.
He's just inconsistent. He's just streaky. I mean, and streaky guys will look great when they're on a hot streak and just disappear. They're not like Haley's Comet, aka Josh Bailey. They only show up once every 87 years. They'll have a streak a year. And Bavillier looks like he's kind of in one now. He's playing really well.
Grumpy. We got another comment here. Stephen V saying here, ever since Lambert filled in, the Islanders have been putting way more shots on net.
Yep.
And they have continued to.
Yeah. So maybe something that Lambert implemented, Barry said, hey, you know what? Let's go with it. We have looked better since he went behind the bench.
Mario here saying, I do believe Lamoriello got rid of most of the scouts that snowballed.
I didn't think he got rid of any of them. I think he kept I thought he kept everyone. Maybe I'm mistaken.
I couldn't tell you. I don't pay enough attention to who the scouts on staff are. Eve L saying here, can we hire a few skating gurus, some figure skating coaches? That'll help get some power.
I am so proud of you, TJ. It only took you about 6 months to learn Eve's name.
No, I've been pronouncing Eve's name correct.
No,
Eve L is what I call him.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It took you a long time to know how to pronounce his first name.
Bjornsson. I do know that one. Steven also says here, I love it when Jiggs fills in. He's still good enough to call a national broadcast.
He is good. I
have liked Shannon Hogan and Anson Carter together.
Yeah.
I like them too. I think that, you talk about people who mesh well together. I wish we brought Anson Carter on full time. I think it would be a step back for him, but I would love to have Anson Carter on as many. We're on a treat here having Anson Carter as often as we do.
Yeah. I don't know why. You know what? I'm glad too. I like him. Like that. Shannon's not the most knowledgeable, but she's a good facilitator. Yes. And she's bubbly and
she can facilitate conversation. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think that Anson and her are a good mix.
Fantastic. Absolutely are. Dave D saying, hi, guys. I live here in Borgata, New Jersey, Atlantic City. MGM Sports betting on who gets traded on our Islanders team. Sell, buy.
We have to be selling. There's no way we buy, right? No way.
Stephen V saying here, I say keep the hard cap all season long. Teams that can use long-term injury reserve, etc., can use cap space wisely and not go 20% over the cap. It's stupid. And then Max P saying, how about this? If and when your long-term injury player comes back in the playoffs, the replacement player are no longer eligible once that happens. Or just, hey, it gets added back to the cap. Shooters Puck Hockey says, definitely we'll do a scouting report on the ice for you guys. I'll try to send some pictures to you guys. Is there an email I can reach out and send them to? Yes, it's IslandersFans@gmail.com.
Islanders Fans United?
Yes, that's right. IslandersFansUnited@gmail.com. That is the best.
Okay, I don't even have the email account. You're the one who runs it, and you don't even know what it is.
Here it is, guys. You can see that IslandersFansUnited@gmail. IslandersFansUnited@gmail.com. I'll try to zoom in to make that as big as possible.
IslandersFansUnited@gmail.com. There you go. Thank God I was here once again with my bucket to bail you out.
Good gracious, Grumpy. Good gracious. But thank you, Shooters Puck Hockey. I'm looking forward to that. And then Frank K said, Letty F no.
Agreed.
DB Hooper says, yeah, DB Hooper goes out in the fizzle. Guess my last comment was a little too much. Fair enough to you. I thought it was still funny. But yes, and we answered. So now we got Drew sent us here a meme. Give us a second here, Grump. This is our way ingratiating you into what internet culture is.
Okay.
Drew does one podcast at a time. Josh Bailey, after a guy tries to slash him.
Boom, dick shot. Boom, dick shot. Boom, dick shot.
Oh shit, I wasn't showing you. Do you remember, Grumpy, when Josh Bailey, the guy, tried to go ahead and hit him in between the legs?
Uh-huh.
This is funny as shit.
Boom, dick shot. Boom, dick shot.
Look at that,
Boom, dick
Grumpy.
shot.
Boom, dick shot. I love it. I love it, Drew. Grumpy maybe didn't get it. That's fine. What, Grump?
Nothing. I didn't say anything.
Oh man. Anyway, we are here at the end of the show tonight, Grumpy. What do you want to say before we wrap things up?
I just want to say love and laughter to everyone who listens and even those who don't, from TJ and the Grumpy Old Man.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in and listening to the podcast. We will be back with you guys here next Islander action. Not tomorrow, of course, just because it's a Sunday game. But thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you, Grumpy Old Man.
My pleasure. And because why are we not going to do the game tomorrow?
Because we have the TJ and the Grumpy Old Man show, which can be found in the link in the description below or as a featured channel on our YouTube page.
Major League Baseball coming back. The NFL always in play. Wild stuff going on. Listen, it's fun. And we're going to have fan fights tomorrow. Guaranteed fan fights tomorrow.
Fan fights, absolutely. But thank you again, Grumpy, and thank you everybody for listening in. We'll see you soon. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube, like on Facebook, and follow on Twitter. Leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it. Thank you so much, guys, and thank you again, Grumpy.
My pleasure.